I'm gonna dump one of my stories for you all. LLL, leave it up to you to be alive it or not after your own mind, but for me this was the biggest nope moment I've had. Some background first. This happened in Boden, Sweden, a couple of years back. Boden is known for one thing, and one thing only: military forts. It was long thought of as the key to northern Sweden, the first thing the Sowies would raffle stomp if they ever came charging. Those forts were secret as fuck in the past, and for some time one of the forts were used to store a large part of Sweden's gold reserve. However, after the Cold War ended, the forts became even more obsolete than before and were decommissioned anyway. The story: B21, hang out with female friend that is more like the sister I never had. We are both scouts and have been for as long as we both can remember. Bored as fuck, decide to go recon a cool campsite for the coming Halloween scare hike. My friend, let's call her, he knows a lot of cool old forts and trench systems. Drive off in my car, which was perfectly fine and had gone through inspection without a hitch only a week before. Decide to check out the nearest old fort. Park the car a couple of 100 meters from the old fort because someone had placed big ass stones as a crude roadblock on the dirt road leading to the fort. The fort is dug like pick related with the exception that only there is no road up to the fort. Pick is another fort near Boden. Walk/climb up to the fort from the right slope that's somewhat accessible. Any thoughts of recon for a campsite has soon been replaced by thoughts of exploration. It's about midday but the daylight is waning fast due to northern Sweden. Luckily we brought flashlights. Eventually locate a hole in the fence big enough for us to get through.
Explore a bit, though all doors are locked either with massive padlocks or internal locks. Start to head back the way we came in. A thick door that we both were sure had been closed before is now slightly ajar. Not by much, just a couple of centimeters. We haven't heard any door opening or anyone else being here. This is a door about 1.5 meters wide, 2.5 m tall and made entirely out of 1 decimeter of solid steel. And on rusty hinges it looks like. Remember that H told me before that the local wildlife seems to shun this place. Okay. Getting a real bad feeling about this right now. We both keep our distance but our curiosity gets the better of us. We both try to peek inside. Pitch fucking dark inside, except I sense something move inside. Don't really know how I know this, but I just get a very weird feeling. Like something is staring at us from inside. We both aim our flashlight and thumb them on. Flashlights both give a short burst of light and then go dead as doorknobs. And we put in new batteries before we went out. In the short picosecond we have light I manage to get a glimpse of something, a gray blackish humanoid shade that looks more like a beast than a man. At the same time something in my mind pushes the primal predator panic button. Nope 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 nope. I'm not sure what H saw, but she is white as a fucking sheet and as damn near panic as I have ever seen her.
We both scramble out without saying a word to each other. Greater than we both must have broken the record on 200 meters panic sprint. Greater than don't know about H, but I felt a something. Can't describe it more than a terrible sense of hate following us. Greater than get in the car. Greater than I turn the key. Greater than nothing. Greater than try to turn it again. Greater than the car won't start. Greater than the headlight won't even turn on. Greater than eventually after turning the key frantically again and again for the longest 2 minutes in my life the car starts. Greater than we get the hell out of Dodge with gravel flying everywhere as I floor it until we get back on the main road. Later learned through other friends that there has been other similar occurrences there. Some hearing a faint but very much mocking laughter coming from beyond that door and others feeling watched when they are near the fort. The door have never been ajar before or after though, and it has always been locked when anyone has tried to open it. Damn, I still get the shivers just by thinking of it. And it has been 5 years since that happened. I can add that neither H nor I have been back inside the fence of that place.
I have a story about when me and my wife had a child. She leaves. Child pushes me to the point I had to give her up because she made me look insane. I couldn't find my wife. Doctors were telling me things about the baby that were impossible. Baby did not eat for a week yet doctors say baby was fine. Made zero sense. After the ordeal I checked myself into a mental health spot for a few days. Ended up stuck there for 3 years. Lost everything. Finally back on my feet but never heard from my wife again. That baby was not right and fooled the doctors and made me a fool.
2 a.m. Be outside at friend's place. Lives by some backcountry woods, by the shed in the yard. Merely feet from the woods, we're talking, having a smoke. Why we were out there at 2 a.m. Keep hearing odd snapping of twigs, must be an animal, or something. Snapping is heavier, goes from twigs to the crushing of large branches, old logs. Footsteps are audible upon touching soft woodland soil. I couldn't help but feel this was fucked up. Hear an absolutely inhuman cry, mix of a guttural snarl and a disembodied screech, cadenced like a shrieking roar, put out cigarette, pull self onto roof of shed, pull him up, we both lie down flat. We were both in the mindset of, play dead, stay ahead, making absolutely no noise. Hear footsteps circle around the shed a bit. Only run for it if it's undisputable we've been found. It walks around by the shed for a few, feels like an hour, makes a few more of the same cries whilst doing so. The noise was simply unearthly. I've never heard anything like it besides then. Eventually walks back into the woods. Hear it go off elsewhere. We wait about 15 minutes, drop off the shed onto our feed. Absolute combat sprint to the house. I still don't have the slightest as to what it was. I wasn't about to shine a light on it and give us away. It was clearly not afraid of us, and frankly, I'm well convinced we were the prey of the scenario. We didn't have any real predator animals in those woods whatsoever. Anybody on X have ideas?
Me at 15, 2008, driving with Dad through Outback, driving the Plenty/Donahue Highway, between the Stewart Highway in the Northern Territory and Boulia in Western Queensland, minus 700 kilometers unsealed road, see no one but a few trucks, maybe 3 in total the whole time, blew 2 tires about 450 kilometers in, and didn't have any more spares so had to drop our speed by a lot just to be safe. As a result, end up taking much longer to drive the length of this road than we otherwise would have. For background, there is a myth/legend in the Boulia area of this so-called Min light that harasses and follows travelers and tries to entice them to leave the road at night and follow it out into the desert. We'd traveled in the area plenty of times before and had never seen it, so we weren't really thinking about it. Be about 8:30 p.m, pretty dark, night sky out there was amazing. BTW, any Australians here, I highly recommend driving along at about 50 to 60 kilometers per hour to prevent any risk of another tire blowing. Light flashes in front of us like a shooting star, but right in front of the windshield. Dad and I WTF, but keep on driving. Happens a few more times. Starts to hang around a bit longer each time. At one point it hovered in front of us for about 30 seconds. Haha, must be the Min. Dad, I'm feeling a little on edge because a light appearing out of nowhere and hovering in front of the car is freaky as fuck. Dad doesn't give a fuck. He starts making verbal challenges to the light. He challenges it to try and lead him off the road. Light disappears. It appears again about 15 minutes later and hovers in front of the car again. Dad stops the car and gets out.
The light starts moving off the road and stops about 10 meters off the road and hovers. Dad starts challenging the light again. Is that the best you've got? Picks up a rock and throws it at the light. All the while I'm sitting in the car not knowing whether to shit myself with fear or piss myself laughing at my dad fighting with a light. After a few seconds the light disappears. At this point we're pretty hungry, so we stay there for about half an hour so and make something to eat. Every 5 minutes Dad starts yelling out for the light. Bring it on, I'm waiting. The light never comes back the whole time. Back DL. Doctor, my dad had a fight with a paranormal light myth and won.
Hey, I'm not from here. I'm a mutant who only comes here for the occasional creepypasta thread. I'm not too into the paranormal and have never believed in ghosts or aliens or any of that sort of stuff. I live in Oak Park, just outside of Chicago, Illinois. See, we have an ordinance here where you're not allowed to put up a "for sale" sign in front of a house. So many homes are vacant here that they'd be absolutely everywhere if we could put them up. So in order to ensure people want to live here, we make it so it doesn't look like nobody wants to live here. Thus, no "for sale" signs. I live alone with my pet cat, an all-black cat which I found out recently is a rarity. His name is Calvin. He was the runt of the litter. This isn't really important. The story all started about 2 months ago. That's when I first got up late at night after a bad dream and went out for a cigarette and saw my neighbor from directly across the street was sitting in front of his large, bright television, which was facing right out his window at my house. I did not think anything of it. As days went on, I kept looking out my window and seeing my neighbor just sitting there watching TV. After 2 weeks, I came to the conclusion that he could very well be dead. It just didn't make sense that he was just sitting there, TV on, not leaving the couch for weeks. I could only see the back of his head, and he very well may have moved while I was at work, but knowing it was there, the light of his television kept me up at night, and for hours on end there would just be no movement. I came to the conclusion that I should call the police to ask if they could check up on my neighbor. I didn't know him very well, we met twice. He was an older guy. I used to see him shoveling snow or raking leaves and I'd offer to help and he said no both times. He was a fairly active guy for his age, and it didn't add up that he'd just sit there for days watching TV and not leaving his house. So I called the police and told them, and they offered to check it out. I saw them pull up and couldn't help but watch. I was very curious, and even though I thought all that would happen was they'd call up an ambulance or something and remove my neighbor's dead body, not something I'd usually be extremely interested in watching, I had grown so curious about what was going on over there that I couldn't settle for the simple answer that my neighbor simply died in front of his television. After knocking a few times, I saw them open up the front door and walk in. They looked around. One of them left the living room, so I couldn't see where he'd gone. I could only see the one room where my neighbor's windows were. The one officer turned off the television and also left my sight. They both left and drove off. About 20 minutes later, I got a call explaining that the house was empty and my neighbor had moved out. They said a real estate agent had probably just accidentally left the television on. I went on to a few real estate websites and, as it were, the house was indeed for sale. Anticlimactic, but at least it was a far less morbid conclusion than I'd expected. I was sort of embarrassed that my mind had immediately gone to death when it really was so bland and simple. And I felt like a pretty bad person for actually feeling a slight sense of disappointment when I found out my neighbor hadn't died as I'd assumed. That was a reasonable answer, a totally logical one. I had no way of knowing without the real estate signs up front, and I had no reason to question it. My neighbor had moved out. Plain and simple. When I went to bed that night, it had pretty much entirely left my head. My bedroom window faces out towards my neighbor's house. For the last 2 weeks I had been watching the television from my bed. It was how I went to sleep, just confusedly staring in wonder. Slightly disturbed knowing I could be looking at the back of the head of my dead neighbor. And since I had been staring at that television for the last 2 weeks, it took a few minutes to register the horror when I crawled into bed and looked at the television, still on across the street.
I didn't sleep very well. Every night, for about a month and a half, I'd just see that television. During the day, it was on. I'd walk up to the house when I was feeling more adventurous, and knock on the door, but nobody answered. I started smoking quite a bit in lieu of proper sleep. Every night, I'd walk by the house, curious, scared, and confused. I contacted the realtor and asked if they were giving tours, and she said they were not, so it didn't get turned on during some open house. I thought maybe I was hallucinating that the television was never on, but the officer definitely went over it and turned it off. So it had absolutely been on, at least in the first place. I invited a friend over 2 weeks ago, and after a little hanging out I told him the story and asked, straight-faced and horrified, if the television was on. He said that it was. He was clearly concerned for my health, and I don't blame him. So the only other option I could think of was that maybe a squatter had taken up residence in the vacant house. It wasn't common in the area, as far as I knew. There's very little crime or homelessness in the suburban area I live in, so it didn't really make any sense for somebody to squat here, but it was last night, I worked up the courage to confront this squatter. I was going to call the police, but assuming the squatter had been there when I first called, I doubted it would do anything to tell them again. I worked it out in my head that as long as somebody else was living in that house illegally, it wasn't so bad for me to walk over and enter uninvited myself. Stupidly, I worked up this courage while smoking a cigarette late at night, where the only light out was the light pollution over to the east in Chicago and the dim light of the street lamps. Shaking, both from the terrible cold weather we've been having lately and from the nervousness taking over, I opened the door. I was hoping the door was locked so I could back down on my sudden wave of courage and walk away without feeling like I was just running off with my tail between my legs. To my surprise and dismay, the door was not locked. I felt briefly confused, wondering why the realtor hadn't put in a lock like they did when I sold my house, but I realized that if there was somebody squatting here, then it shouldn't come as a surprise that there wasn't exactly airtight security. Slowly, timidly, I walked towards the living room. I could hear the faint murmur or infomercials and see the moving lights and colors of the screens shine as I tiptoed, trying to make as little noise as possible. My whole body went cold as I entered the room. There was my squatter, a middle-aged woman, wrinkly, gray-haired, and dressed like a homeless person. It at least added up. I was more horrified of the fact that I had to now confront them than at the woman herself. I stuttered a scared hello and she looked at me, and before I could form a thought she screamed the most hellish, horrifying scream I've ever heard. It was not the scream of a middle-aged woman. It was demonic, deep and ear-splitting. I froze up and my heart sank and my eyes widened and I stared, accepting that I was going to die, at this screaming woman for what seemed like eternity. It was an unwavering scream. It didn't sound like she was losing her breath after what had to have been a whole minute. The moment the initial wave of shock wore off, I just turned and ran. She hadn't moved save for turning to look at me as she screamed, and I looked to make sure she hadn't gotten up to follow me out, and she had not. I ran to my house. I considered calling the police, but I didn't want to explain the situation or risk getting myself into legal trouble for trespassing on my neighbor's property, and if they went there and again did not find the squatter, there was no question that I'd be seen as completely insane. I lay awake, refusing to look across the street at the television screen, and my thoughts raced. Surely it had to have just been a squatter. She looked like one. She was clearly living in a house that wasn't hers. She was probably a mentally unstable homeless woman. I decided the scream couldn't have been as awful as I had thought. It was all just the makings of a scared mind. I actually managed to get some sleep, shockingly enough, and when I woke up I briefly didn't even remember what had happened the night before. What I woke up to was somewhat odd. My cat always sleeps downstairs in the living room on the sofa, but I found him, wide awake, sitting on my bed cleaning himself. In all my years living here, I never woke up with him in my room. I pet him for a little and went downstairs. As I began remembering the events of the previous night, I decided to go out for a cigarette, and on my way out I found that my front door had been unlocked. I ran through last night in my head and I remembered vividly my frantic run home ending in me making sure all my doors were locked. My memory is very rarely faulty. I felt my stomach churn and my heart sink, and I felt a chill as I walked back upstairs to go to my living room. What I found would have been entirely mundane in any other setting. My television set was on. I called the police to explain the situation. I called out of work and am spending the next few days in my friend's home with my laptop and my cat.
I found it. I couldn't find the pictures for the second story, though I enhanced the picture so you can see it better. Also, if you zoom in you can see the detail on her fingers. I'm gonna repost the story for convenience. Be me. About 4 years ago, used to chill with friends in basement. Basement isn't attached to house. We lived in an apartment complex and all basements were on the bottom floor. Always left door unlocked. Me and friend use Ouija board. In 4 Ouija board woobla. Few days or weeks later, go downstairs to chill. Doors locked. Landlord was there earlier so I thought he locked it. Asked everyone I lived with if they locked it. Nope. Called landlord. He didn't lock it either. Whatever. Thought maybe someone broke in and was sleeping there. Go outside around my house and look in basement window. No one was there. Remember Ouija board? Ghosts maybe? We had a deadbolt lock on the basement, so the only way to lock it was from the inside. Decide to check deadbolt to see if it was locked. My eyesight sucks, so I couldn't see well. Take picture with phone. Maybe I can zoom in to see better. Look at pic, zoom in. Still can't see. Lock pic quality was shit. Noticed something near the door. Thumb over. A girl, she looked pretty tall, was sitting up against the door with her hands on her knees, dressed in all black. Long black hair. Didn't look like the girl from The Grudge either or anything. I wasn't too freaked out. I was more amazed. We never seen anything like that before. I figured she locked the door for privacy or something. This is completely true. I don't make shit up about things like this. Pick very related. I also have another story about that basement.
Mom's fiance is in the basement working out. Later comes upstairs and said he saw a dark shadow and an orange cat out of the corner of his. We don't have an orange cat. This was a few weeks after the first story. Decide to go to basement window again. Look in, nothing. Take like 4 pictures. In all pictures there was a dark shadow on the right side. Underneath looked like a man laying down with some type of logo on his shirt. We had a lot of junk down there though, so it could have been something else. 4th picture. Dark shadow on the right hand side. The words, boo, written on the window. From the inside, thought cool. This ghost has a sense of humor. Look closer at, BOO. Pentagram drawn in the second, 0. I also have pictures of this somewhere. I will definitely try to find them.
Be me, 6 years old, come from an extremely poor family and live in a post-communist European shithole. Christmas of 1998, instead of a stash of presents I got news about my parents dying in a car crash. Go to sleep after crying my eyes out. Wake up in the morning, there's a single box of chocolates there. Get freaked out but eat it anyway. Fast forward to today. Going through old shit stashed in the attic while looking for something. Find a weird wooden box, a ton of family photos. Spend an hour or 2 looking at them. Find this one. Spoiler, the date written on the back is December 24, 1998 /spoiler. What the actual fuck did I just find? Who took the goddamn photo? I was alone at home on that day.
So a little backstory, I grew up in the suburbs of Philly in Pennsylvania. Somewhat rural and kind of normal suburbia. Sometimes, when I was a kid, I would go to summer camp up in the Pocono Mountains. Lenape natives and the like populated them in the old days. So this happened when I went to Camp Watonka, oh no name, the summer that I was 15 or 16 years old. The camp was doing manhunt, which all the younger kids loved. It's essentially hide and seek mixed with tag done in the dark. Every kid was given a small flashlight and told to stay in groups over at least 2. So being the fucks we were, me, a kid named Scott, and a kid named Eric went up to where our bunk was. Now I'm going to try to draw a really basic setup of the camp. Overall there's the main camp that is most of the cabins. It's lower down than the lake, where we swam and fished, and the older kids' cabin. I should say now that it was an all-boys camp. So me, Scott, and Eric go up to our bunk, no one else is there. It was all supposed to stay in the main camp, no one goes up to the lake area and no one crosses the bridge into the woods. Not the trees, but on the opposite side there was a bridge across a gorge that led into deep forestation. No one is really allowed in it past sunset, makes sense, it's dangerous and kids are idiots. So the 3 of us are chilling on the steps up to the cabin, reading comics and being idiots. Then we see someone coming from the woods area that rims the majority of the lake. This was weird because everyone, including the counselors and kids, were supposed to be in main camp, but also had no pathways into those woods. So they're around 50 yards away from just kind of hobbling toward us. Eric suggested that they could be hurt and we should help them, to which Scott said fuck off. I said it's probably a counselor trying to scare us for not playing the nightly game. Scott likewise said fuck off. When he was around 0 yards out we could see what he looked like. Moonlight and the dimmish cabin lights. He looked like he'd been in a fight. Like his nose was off, his cheeks must have been shattered, and his jaw was limp. He didn't really walk as much as stumbled eloquently. Scott later described his appearance as caveman got fucked by a gray then dropped from the mothership, which fits well. So the 3 of us are making jokes about how it's a nice costume, how he's an ugly fuck, etc. When he was about 10 feet away we realized a few things. It reeked like blood, the fleshy iron tinge. It was just in the air. We also heard the canteen bell. That means everyone, and I mean everyone except us 3, is down in main camp. Insert noping. Scott, Eric, and I run the fuck inside and lock the thin pine door. The thing walked up to the steps we'd been hanging out on. Just stood there. It easily could have broken the door and gotten to us. But it stood there. Probably for about 10 minutes. Then it shrieked. I've since read other skinwalker stories, and let me tell you that no matter how hard we try, nothing matches that noise. When it stopped, it ran away. Like swiftly and extremely fast. We stayed inside the cabin, too scared to leave. About 3 minutes later, I'm guessing, no clock, 4 of the head counselors, owner and family, came through the area on quads, each with a rifle. When they saw we weren't at canteen they figured we were here, then they heard the shriek. Apparently they never crossed the bridge and only did stuff at night. I was told this by the older counselors later. They were testing the waters with us. Fucking scary, man.
This is a true story. Back in the 1990s, a girl committed suicide after viewing an image posted in an old newsgroup. The image was of a figure which some identified as a woman standing in the middle of a lonely road. The figure is transparent to the point that its legs are barely visible and is illuminated by an unknown light source coming from the direction of the camera. Whether it's headlights, a handheld flashlight, or the light of the camera itself isn't known for sure, as the actual source of the image has never been identified. No facial features can be made out, but the figure is most easily identified by its long, bony appendages which partly resemble a spider's legs. Those who have seen the image or know of its existence have come to know the figure in it as the Wanderer. The first known Wanderer account occurred in 1996. Jane, a college girl who was visiting her family during the holiday season, had an interest in the paranormal. She saw the Wanderer image on a news group along with a message reading, "Do you see me? I can see you too." Dozens of other users saw the same post. Most didn't think much of it, just that it was somehow funny. Some actually complained that they experienced headaches while they looked at the image, and similar claims have been made by others since. According to Jane's family, she suffered from nightmares in the nights after seeing the image. She claimed she would wake up and see the Wanderer outside her window. Sometimes it would scrape the glass with its spider-like limbs, but usually it would just stand there and stare at her. She would find herself unable to move while in its presence, as if many unseen hands were holding her down. Even if she closed her eyes, she would still see it. Her family was sure she had just been frightened by an image online and was having nightmares as a result, until Jane complained of seeing the Wanderer in her waking life as well. She was convinced it was following her. She would see it even while she was in a room full of people or out in public, even though no one else saw anything. Jane's family feared for her sanity, but only assured her that the Wanderer wasn't real. Jane, however, only got worse. She began going to extreme lengths to stay awake at night. It started out just with caffeine and staying active, but quickly graduated to cutting herself and screaming all through the night. Before long, she wasn't sleeping at all. She was convinced that, if she slept again, the Wanderer would take her. Her family knew they couldn't just wait and hope for the best. Jane needed help, but when Jane's mother knocked on her daughter's bedroom door, she received no answer. She carefully opened the door, not wanting to disturb or startle Jane, but still she heard nothing. Jane wasn't in her bed. She wasn't sitting at her computer. She didn't appear to be in her room at all, until her mom checked the closet. There, Jane was found curled in the corner. Blood reddened the front of her body, having drained from the long slit across her throat. She was clutching a blood-stained note which read, "It can't have me now." Jane's case is not isolated. Through the rest of the 90s, dozens of others went missing or committed suicide after viewing the image of the Wanderer. Since the turn of the century, despite my best efforts at locating the image, it seems to have disappeared. Recently though, I posted on a newsgroup asking if anyone had heard of the Wanderer. I've done this many times before and usually there's one or two people who have heard the story, but no one who has seen the image. This time was different. Shortly after posting, I received an email in my inbox. The subject of the email was, "I can see you?" The body only read, "Do you see me? I can see you too." There was an image attached with the message. I can't verify whether it's the real Wanderer image or not, but I must warn you that, if you choose to view the image, you do so at your own risk.
Camping with friends, walking along this path with my friend talking loudly, she asks me, "Oh crap, Meg, did you bring that extra sleeping bag for me?" "Yeah, I got it, we're good." We keep walking, getting pretty far away from camp. Suddenly from the brush across the stream that our path paralleled, "Bddi burpering itra epiberg foamy." It was so inhuman, sounding like an animal almost. It repeats several times, each time it sounds more and more like my friend. We are terrified. We start running back, hear leaves moving behind us, too afraid to look. From behind us in a low whimper, "Why, I'm hurt." Sounds just like me, I'm crying. We keep running. As we get closer to the opening into the field we were camping in, the bushes are thicker, we're not real fit and we had been running pretty hard, gasping for air. Directly from the right of us, tired yet, sounds like her again with almost a bark, shaking so hard at this point. I turn and look back, see this massive mound of fur in the bushes, turn and go back the way we came from, get to camp and tell our friends what happened. They of course don't believe us. We refuse to stay there that night, get in her car and drive to town and sleep in a cheap motel. About 10 p.m. her phone rings, "Friends at the camp. Jesus, will you guys give it up? It's been 2 hours, you're not scaring us, just keeping us from sleeping." Friend gets hysterical, telling them to leave. They're convinced we drove back there or in the woods, yelling that we're hurt and for them to come help us. I turn up the motel TV and let them hear that we're in town. They hang up immediately and drive to our motel and spend the rest of the night. Next day we go back for our shit and never go camping again.
I almost had a heart attack when I saw this thread. From age 12 to 17 I would always see this man. I named him Skinwalker, and I never knew why. It just felt right. This is my first time on 9, but I have a story if you'd like to hear it.
Okay, here goes. I've always had an overactive imagination. I'm an artist and I was diagnosed with ADHD as a child. Never medicated though, so my mind was constantly everywhere. And I was always drawing and fucking around as a kid. My imagination would do terrible things to me sometimes, probably a result of watching horror movies at a young age. Scary shit lurked around every corner. But, on one occasion I knew it wasn't just my imagination. I was in 6th grade at the time. Probably 12 or so. And I lived in a small town of a major highway. Like seriously small. The only major thing in the town burnt to hell 20 years ago. Then a kid died in the high school, so it was condemned. The only shit here was a cemetery, lake, post office, gas station, all on about 4 blocks of town. Another strange thing about this town is the fact that in the early 1900s it was booming. Now it was a dusty literal ghost town with about 40 people living there. People who never spoke or went outside. The only other kids were my best friends. And there were only 3 of us, and every morning we walked together to the bus stop. And none of us spoke on most mornings. One morning it was more foggy than usual. But I remember it was cold and a little misty outside. My uncle, now deceased, grew up here and he always told me fucked up stories about this town. He told me to watch myself, strange shit was going on here. But he was kind of a loony. So I didn't worry about most times. This morning though, this morning felt off. I wasn't too stressed because I knew the others would be walking up soon enough. And when they didn't, I started freaking out. And when I stood alone at the bus stop my imagination started going wild. I was in the middle of imagining a set of eyes in the mist when from about 10 feet away from me to the left I remember seeing something walking. This was absolutely real. I remember every detail. It was a man, in shape and stature. But the way it walked seriously makes my bones numb. Slow and rhythmic, like it was floating. My 12-year-old eyes bulged out of my skull and I remember freezing in terror. Good God, I can't even stop shaking while typing this. Then he looked at me. Fucking looked directly at me. Eyes. His eyes. They were so far apart they were almost on the sides of his head which was oblong. Like IDK. A sideways egg but not that long. And he had a small nose in the center. Absolutely hairless. No hair. Just pale dirty white skin. With crooked jagged yellow teeth underneath a disgusting smile. I've seen a ton of creepypasta threads and heard almost exact descriptions of ghouls and I've wondered if maybe they saw who or what I saw but it's never the same. Do it? Yes please, OC always welcomed.
Of course we fucking want to hear it. Welcome to LX, new fag. If there isn't anyone here I'll stop. He didn't leave me until the headlights of the school bus came over the hill. Then without taking his eyes off of me he raised one hand and waved. But not like goodbye wave. More like a see you around wave. Then walked slowly away from the spot he stood for what felt like an eternity. When the bus pulled up I was crying. I don't know why. I don't remember what triggered it. But the driver had to call the school who called my mom who came and picked me up. I tried telling her what I saw. But she didn't believe me. She said that it was probably just a guy in a mask fucking with me. I knew it wasn't. I know it wasn't because for the next 5 years of my life he was there. Watching me. And almost enjoying our time together. Like he was watching his favorite TV show. For the first few months his appearance sent me into a terrible frenzy of crying and screaming. And my mom, who was single most of my childhood, worked second and third shifts to keep our house, was never there at night or afternoon to watch me. So I never had anyone to tell. I was frightened and alone so much. But whenever I would see him I would call my grandma and talk to her on the phone hoping he would see this and think I was talking to the cops or something. I don't know, I was 12 to 13. I would shut the blinds and watch TV and try not to think about it. He only would make appearances like once a week. So it wasn't an everyday kind of thing. Then at some point I remember that I realized he never came near me or touched me or anything. He just stood watching me. Whether it be outside my widow's or in the cornfield just beyond the fence to the playground at school. I'm here. Here, just got back from shitting.
I remember I got used to him. And after a while he was nothing more than scenery. And when I would go on trips or vacation or something he wasn't there. It was only around this small town. On one instance when I was about 15 or 16 I was on a walk with a friend of mine. We were walking near the edge of the town where the paved roads turn into gravel and the cemetery sits next to the graveyard. When I saw Skinwalker, as I had taken to calling him. He was about 100 yards away. Leaning casually up against a gravestone. I asked my friend while keeping my eye on Skinwalker, wanna go into the graveyard? He was down, so we went in. It had become obvious to me that Skinwalker wasn't noticed by anyone other than myself. So it wasn't a shock that when I walked almost directly next to him my buddy was oblivious. Shit. I remember that was the closest I'd ever been to him. He was so much more detailed this close. His skin. Christ. I'll never forget it. It was almost translucent. He wasn't just pale. He was old. And he was staring directly into my eyes. His eyes. They were green. Not black. I remember. Green with a hint of yellow and brown. I remember he had pretty eyes. But they were so beady and far apart. I had forgotten all about my friend when he said, "Why are you staring at that gravestone?" I looked at him and then Skinwalker. But he wasn't there anymore. Just an old weathered slab of tall concrete. I looked at it for a second. Then I noticed a name. _1846 to 1874. I paid no attention to this for a long time. Until noticed that every time I was in the graveyard, there he was. Same pose. Same stone. Watching me. One day, I was reading a book on the paranormal when I thought about something. Maybe he was just a ghost. And maybe he wanted me to help him. So I came up with a plan.
I rode my bike to the graveyard. I don't know why I rode a bike. At the time I thought it might make a quicker getaway if he tried to get me or something. I don't know. Anyway, I approached him, standing there as usual, and I said, "Can you hear me?" He just looked, blank-faced. No response. "If you need my help, tell me." Then he seemed to get angry. I don't remember exactly what happened. All I remember was that I ran. I ran and didn't look back until I was on my bike. And then when I got onto my bike, turned, he was standing there, still at the gravestone with one arm stretches out to me, like he was reaching for me to come back, or like he was sorry or something. I don't know. I didn't stick around for much longer to find out. I rode as fast as I could home. And that was the last time I saw him for a while. A few months went by and I started to get really anxious. Avoiding being alone, avoiding going outside after dark. I was so scared I would see him again. But at the same time I felt bad. Like I shouldn't have upset him. I felt sorry for him. I don't know. It's weird, but I felt like we were friends. I still feel like we were friends. The first time I saw him again was while I was riding the bus to school. I no longer had to walk to the bus stop though. I was in high school. But I know it was him. He was walking, or dancing down the sidewalk, but it was only a quick glance. He watched me go past him. I knew he knew I was on. And that was it. His appearance became less and less frequent until one night. The last night I've ever seen him. I was 17 years old and my mom had announced we were moving. Things had gotten serious with her boyfriend and we were moving in with him. Our boxes were being packed and the house was on the market. It was about midnight and I was alone in the house as usual. I was drawing in my living room. I had my supplies laid out in front of me and I was going to town on the paper when I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. It was him. But this was a first. He was in my house. My first reaction was to scream. He took a step back. I remember this as being a strange moment. I was quiet, and he seemed scared. We watched each other for a moment, then I realized I had nothing to fear and I went back to drawing. He moved about for a moment and wound up standing behind me. It was like he wanted to watch me draw. So I remember letting him. He moved himself in front of me. He stood there looking not at me, my sketches, but at me. I'm not sure how long this lasted. But at some point I realized he must have wanted me to draw him. So I did. I started slowly. But eventually it was normal. I just sat completely silent drawing this being. This fucked up thing that had followed me for damn near 5 years. And when I was done, I held my notebook up. He seemed to be happy. He seemed to be completely ecstatic actually. His smile seemed bigger and his eyes seemed more kind. I'm pretty sure I smiled too. He liked it. I have absolutely no idea how long we stayed that way. But eventually he turned away from me and walked into another room. And then, he was gone. Forever. My mom and I moved and went on with our lives. I'm 20 now and living on my own. And I wish with everything inside of me I didn't leave that notebook with my mother because it's probably in storage somewhere now. I wish I could show you guys that drawing. But it's not here at my apartment. So, I did this for you all. Here he is. His image forever burned into my skull. I would also like to say this. Every year, since I've moved, I go back to that gravestone and I leave flowers. Every year I've hoped to see him standing there. And I plan on doing this until I die. That's my story. Few people know it. And even fewer believe me. Any questions? Expected to be scared shitless. Ended up with feels. I bet he'll look kinda cute. OOOHHHGOD Jesus Christ fuck fook. I expected a more docile looking creature, but hooly why shit. I would literally cry every day if I saw that more than once. I don't care if your story is real or not, it's a nice and creepy story. You should try to get that notebook though. That was beautiful. Any thoughts on who he was?
So I have this story saved for a long time now. And actually posting it first time in a Nopi thread, 2007 8ths forgot the exact time but late 2007 early 2008, friends go exploring way in bumfuck nowhere around eastern Oregon, get lost in woods for hours, GPS isn't working right after about the first 2 hours of hiking, getting dark shearing animals in the woods, coyotes and other larger game, pull out SIG 9mm, walk out into a clearing hoping it's the road, no road, just a large clearing with a small slightly beat up ranch house and a light on in the front room. Run up to door, start knocking. Some friend points out this could be a couple of old rednecks with a moonshine operation running, holster gun and pull jacket over it, keep knocking, nothing, door is slightly ajar, push it open slowly, call out hello, anyone home? We have been lost in the woods all day and we're wondering if you could point us to the road, hear nothing, hello, we're coming in, push door open, 3 of us are in your doorway, anyone here? We walk and the air just feels thin and creepy. I'll pull out my gun and start clearing the room with the light on, really nothing in the room, a little stool and lamp sighting on it, it's a oil burning lamp, a old rotten couch, go back into hallway and enter next room.
Now where it gets dirty, hear friend just scream bloody murder, run back into hallway and into the room. Hess now standing with gun drawn and ready to go, see a very dry very old core hanging in the center of the room, it's nearly completely bone at this point, no cloths and can't tell if it's a man or woman. Put gun away, looking around room, see a pantry that's just slightly open and hear a light noise like breathing, pull gun, round chambered, motion to friend to open the pantry, he slowly walks up and flings the door open, a man's body covered in flies and bugs, shotgun in hand, his head just covering the wall, not nearly as decomposed, nope the fuck out and run away as fast as we can, look back, see figure in front of the light before it goes dead, nope.png.alv.jpg.gif. Whip out GPS, and check where we are, shit's all kind of fucked, screen keeps flashing on and off where we're but the lot and long are both 00, shit fuck shit, we're ripping through the woods, stop and catch breath. Take a look at GPS again, see out location, but it is still blinking back to another one marked 00 sway start walking back to our car we had saved in the GPS all the while it's blinking back to our previous location, still have the heebie-jeebies, finally back to car, GPS is still flipping shit, get in car. Friends holding GPS and says it's blinking to around the car, but like 16 feet off, see light in the wood suddenly, light flies towards us, oil lamp smashes on front of car, nope, rip that shit into reverse and drive like a bat out of hell out of there, GPS still blinking to behind us, after we get about 30 miles away the GPS goes back to normal, never told anyone about it, never talked about it again.
It's notoriously haunted roommate and I decided to go to find out once and for all if ghosts are real. Record with our phones as we call out and ask yes or no questions to the spirits for 45 minutes from the middle of the 300 yards tunnel at midnight. There end up being spirits at each entrance that would make a smacking sound with energy like 2 rocks smacking to answer our questions with a yes, and would stay silent to answer no. Do you like us being here? Smack, do you want us to leave? Silent think we just made friends, until we go back and listen to the recording. Right after we asked if they wanted us to leave, scary male voice says, yeah. It was only on my recording and not my roommate's. His recording also had the same voice whisper, turn the lights out, as we were walking to the center of the tunnel with our flashlights. Went back a few more times but this was the most eventful time.
I used to work at a cemetery during graveyard hours. Irony. I worked there for 5 to 6 weeks. Super chill job, walk under the stars, smoke weed, drink beer. I caught 2 gay guys having sex one time. Super hells. The craziest thing that happened was this old guy came to me asking me if he could see his daughter. We had regulations that didn't allow people to come in at nighttime. I told him I really shouldn't but he started to sob in this weird high-pitched cat-like gargle so I let him in but stayed me distance. I went and did my rounds on the opposite side of the cemetery to give the man his space, but then I heard a loud bang coming near the man's direction, so I ran over and couldn't find him. I looked around for him until I noticed the front gate was shut and locked. I thought the man must have slammed the gate and locked it behind him, so I decided to chill out and smoke a joint while I walked to my beer stash near the mausoleum. As I walked over I kept seeing shadows of figures around me. I flashed my light but didn't see anyone or anything, so thought it was due to me being high as fuck. As I got closer to the mausoleum I seen a faint light flickering inside. There is a light inside the building but it is usually off, and even if it was on it would be bright. I went into sneak mode and slowly made my way over. I couldn't see through the windows, so I grabbed my pepper spray, not supposed to have, but I thought it may help, especially after the gaze, and went to the front door. The lock on the front was broken, so a large hole was in the door. I looked through the hole and seen 3 candles on the ground and someone in the center. I would call the police, but I was high and drunk, and had beer stashed all over. I kicked the door in and shined the light over to him and told him I was holding a gun. This guy with sunken eyes and cheeks wearing a hooded robe, he had a reverse triangle and a necklace, looked at me but didn't speak. I heard sounds behind me, so I turned around to see. There was the old man, with 4 guys wearing hoods, all with the same necklace, standing behind him. The old guy put his arm around me and walked me away, as the other men went inside. He walked me behind the mausoleum and gave me one of my beers from my stash, no idea how he knew where it was. He told me to relax and began telling me how I shouldn't bring this up, how it would look bad on me. He left with his friends after 30 minutes, and I told my boss I caught some gays trying to break in. I still can't figure out what they wanted or what the necklace represents. I do know that they just put a dead guy in there, that was a Mason and some Rosicrucian or some shit. Any info would be sweet. Sorry for spelling, I'm high as fuck.
The thing in the window. That thing has been there for almost a week. The figure in the window. R looks featureless, only skin on a human frame, and it's pressing itself against the glass somehow. I don't know how I got there, and I don't know how to get any of it. At first I thought I was a prank, a doll or mannequin that some jerks put there to scare me, but I realized as I walked out of my house to pull away. Wasn't there. I shrugged off, thinking that someone had hidden while I was talking through my door. But I went back in and looked out that same window, and I was looking in, staring at me. I walked around my house, yelling for whoever I was to come out, but no one was there. The thing is hairless and naked, and I didn't look like I actually had eyes, or even a face at all, but his head is turned towards me when I enter the room. When I sit on my computer, I can feel his faceless hatred boring into my neck, but when I turn around, it's innocently turned in a different direction. Finally on Thursday I tried to open the window, but eyes stuck. I think the thing's hands are keeping it down. But I got a good look at R's face. T's eyes and mouth are behind the skin, pushing outward. R stared at me, smiling, and the SMLE just got wider and wider and wider, until thought its head would break and Hall raised its own hand and bashed the window. WIHS bomb. Ruaz mocking me. But I saw the faintest crack began to appear where it had hit, and I backed away. No way did I want that smile in the same room as me, so I'll get a roll of duct tape, and I started covering the window. I couldn't look directly at I nearly SHT my pants just knowing was watching me. But I couldn't help her. I took a quick glance at the skin-covered face. A small peek. Ruaz angry. That grin was now a gaping frown full of teeth. The skin had ripped away from his mouth and I could see down his cavernous throat. A menacing rumble started to fill the house, and that hairline crack began to spread like splintering ice. I pulled down the duct tape. The rumble stopped. The split skin healed over, and began to smile again. Now it's night, and the noise hasn't started again. There are no sounds, no rumble, no crackling glass. Everything's quiet now. I can feel its claws gripping the back of my chair. I can hear its skin stretching as it smiles. Eyes watching me type.
The Secret History of the World. Demons in 1954. A young Princeton University doctoral candidate named Hugh Everett III came up with a radical idea. That there exist parallel universes, exactly like our universe. These universes are all related to ours. Indeed, they branch off from ours, and our universe is branched off of others. Within these parallel universes, our wars have had different outcomes than the ones we know. Species that are extinct in our universe have evolved and adapted in others. In other universes, we humans may have become extinct. With his many worlds theory, Everett was attempting to answer a rather sticky question related to quantum physics. Why does quantum matter behave erratically? The quantum level is the smallest one science has detected so far. The study of quantum physics began in 1900, when the physicist Max Planck first introduced the concept to the scientific world. Planck's study of radiation yielded some unusual findings that contradicted classical physical laws. These findings suggested that there are other laws at work in the universe, operating on a deeper level than the one we know. In fairly short order, physicists studying the quantum level noticed some peculiar things about this tiny world. For one, the particles that exist on this level have a way of taking different forms arbitrarily. For example, scientists have observed photons, tiny packets of light, acting as particles and waves. Even a single photon exhibits this shape-shifting. Imagine if you looked and acted like a solid human being when a friend glanced at you, but when he looked back again, you'd taken a gaseous form. This idea is supported by the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, posed by the Danish physicist Niels Bohr. This interpretation says that all quantum particles don't exist in one state or the other, but in all of its possible states at once. The sum total of possible states of a quantum object is called its wave function. The state of an object existing in all of its possible states at once is called its superposition. According to Bohr, when we observe a quantum object, we affect its behavior. Observation breaks an object's superposition and essentially forces the object to choose one state from its wave function. This theory accounts for why physicists have taken opposite measurements from the same quantum object. The object chose different states during different measurements. Young Hugh Everett agreed with much of what the highly respected physicist Niels Bohr had suggested about the quantum world. He agreed with the idea of superposition, as well as with the notion of wave functions. But Everett disagreed with Bohr in one vital respect. To Everett, measuring a quantum object does not force it into one comprehensible state or another. Instead, a measurement taken of a quantum object causes an actual split in the universe. The universe is literally duplicated, splitting into one universe for each possible outcome from the measurement. For example, say an object's wave function is both a particle and a wave. When a physicist measures the particle, there are two possible outcomes. It will either be measured as a particle or a wave. This distinction makes Everett's many worlds theory a competitor of the Copenhagen interpretation as an explanation for quantum mechanics. The many worlds theory and the Copenhagen interpretation aren't the only competitors trying to explain the basic level of the universe. In fact, quantum mechanics isn't even the only field within physics searching for such an explanation. The theories that have emerged from the study of subatomic physics still remain theories. This has caused the field of study to be divided in much the same way as the world of psychology. Theories have adherents and critics, as do the psychological frameworks proposed by Carl Jung, Albert Ellis and Sigmund Freud. String theory was originated by the Japanese-American physicist Michio Kaku. His theory says that the essential building blocks of all matter as well as all of the physical forces in the universe, like gravity, exist on a subquantum level. These building blocks resemble tiny rubber bands, or strings, that make up quarks, quantum particles, and in turn electrons, and atoms, and cells and so on. Exactly what kind of matter is created by the strings and how that matter behaves depends on the vibration of these strings. It is in this manner that our entire universe is composed. And according to string theory, this composition takes place across 11 separate dimensions. Like the many worlds theory, string theory demonstrates that parallel universes exist. According to the theory, our own universe is like a bubble that exists alongside similar parallel universes. Unlike the many worlds theory, string theory supposes that these universes can come into contact with one another. Einstein didn't live long enough to see his quest for the theory of everything taken up by others. Then again, if many worlds is correct, Einstein's still alive in a parallel universe. Perhaps in that universe, physicists have already found the theory of everything. The mind is the key. If we accept that there is good reason to believe in parallel dimensions vastly different from our own, another question naturally arises: can we interact with them? How? And do they interact with us? For more on this, we must turn to the work of NASA physicist Thomas Campbell. Campbell successfully brings the worlds of physics, metaphysics and spirituality together. Campbell has used his work in the field of physics to bridge the gap between ideas of consciousness and the nature of our reality. Campbell has experimented with many atypical areas of research, such as out-of-body experiences, or OOBES, and alternate realities. Campbell's team established techniques for testing these hypotheses and solicited the aid of those claiming paranormal experiences. Eventually, Campbell found himself doing more than simply investigating these claims. He began experiencing them himself. In a workshop in Toronto, August 22, 2009, Campbell briefly explained some of his OOBEs and stated that the most important thing to understand is that an OOBE really has nothing to do with the body and everything to do with the mind. Naturally, it should be called the out-of-mind experience, but as he explained in a joking fashion, our society is not likely to take well to that. Campbell believes that today's science, which does not go outside of the Big Bang, is based on a mystical assumption, for no one really knows what actually happened, never mind what happened before then. It took Einstein 23 years to find the so-called theory of everything, until he came across a huge stumbling block and could go no further, as he was unable to connect the ideas of reality and consciousness. As no one until now has ventured past Einstein's work, it was, relatively speaking, left alone, as no one knew what to do with it. That was until the serious work of quantum physics kicked in. The double-slit experiment demonstrates how the nature of atoms are changed based on the reality they are in or the observer. The double-slit experiment demonstrates that at the quantum level, reality is a probabilistic simulation where consciousness has a strong impact. Campbell uses this experiment to argue that there is never an objective reality, no matter how much we try to tell ourselves or think there is. As soon as our brain touches any thought or observation, it is subjective and is thus altered. We simply are the recipients of numerous packets of data at each and every moment, and we are constant interpreters of that data, according to our own filters. If Campbell's theory holds, consciousness change has the potential to change reality itself. It is possible to influence reality by changing one's consciousness, provided one's exertions do not radically defy probability. As radical as this may sound, it is not in fact a new idea. Consciousness change and interdimensional beings. In January through March of 1918, Aleister Crowley began a series of magical workings called the Amelantra workings in Central Park West, New York City. These were performed via consciousness-altering rituals with the intent to summon certain intelligences. One such intelligence was brought into physical manifestation via magically created rent in the fabric of time and space, which he claims to have created. Crowley's illustration of Lamb. Crowley maintained that this illustration is a portrait drawn from life. This entity called itself Lamb. Since Crowley's time, several occult groups and individuals following in his footsteps have claimed to have successfully contacted Lamb. Most notably, Michael Bertot in the 1960s, followed by a group of Ordo Templi Orientis initiates in the 1970s. These individuals consider Lamb to be an extraterrestrial entity and claimed remarkable success in their invocations. Such summonings have an ancient history. The reign of King Solomon. In both Jewish and the Islamic traditions, Solomon is associated with stories of the marvelous. His realm is described by the rabbis as having extended over the upper world, inhabited by the angels, and over the whole of the terrestrial globe with all its inhabitants, including demons and spirits. His control over the demons and spirits augmented his splendor, the demons bringing him precious stones. He became the subject of rabbinic and Kabbalistic lore in which he is portrayed as a fabulous figure, a master magician possessing occult powers. The most important of Solomon's acts was his building of the temple, in which he was assisted by angels and demons. Indeed, the edifice was throughout miraculously constructed, the large, heavy stones rising to and settling in their respective places of themselves. A medieval illustration of King Solomon and his demons. In ancient history, the powerful were often associated with such miraculous cats, and monarchs frequently sought the counsel of priests and mystics, who allegedly had the power to connect with otherworldly beings with secret knowledge. Didn't such activities end with the ushering in of the modern secular age? Haven't we left the era of angels and demons long behind? Blair's otherworldly aids. While in Mexico in August 2001, Prime Minister Tony Blair and his wife Cherie Blair, a Crown Court judge, underwent a Mayan ritual in a temazcal, a Mayan steam chamber intended to induce hallucinations. Herb-infused water was thrown over heated lava rocks to create a cleansing sweat. The couple then saw phantom animals emerge from the steam, and their spiritual aid helped to interpret these messages. The couple then let out a primal scream of psychic rebirth, before venturing outside again. The Blair family's flirtations with the mystic did not end here. In 2002, there were also reports that Cherie Blair was visiting a spiritualist for channeling sessions. Cherik was driven to a Surrey home by a police bodyguard where she sat within a solche of protective stones while her medium accessed the spiritual world on Mrs. Blair's behalf. The medium then meditated so that she could communicate with the other world in what she called a spiritual release. Although the article has now been erased from their archives, the London Times reported on March 8, 2004 that Tony Blair had been accepting political advice from an entity called simply The Light. Foster also claims Blair phoned Kaplan, his spiritual advisor, on returning from a visit to George W. Bush in April 2002. She told me Tony said that war against Iraq was inevitable. In the article in Vanity Fair, Foster claims that when Blair has had clashes with Gordon Brown, he has sought advice from Kaplan, who got her mother Sylvia to do a reading involving a hidden force called the Light. Foster said, Tony would call and Carol would say, "Till ask Mum to channel on this and ring you back." Then she'd call back and say, "You must not confront him on this. Now isn't the right time." The Sutton family's testimony. The cases we have dealt with so far involve channeling, hallucination, or myths of the ancient world. In the absence of physical evidence, it would be easy to assume that these beings are merely figments of the imagination. For this reason, it is necessary to rely on testimony of credible witnesses rather than forensic evidence. The following account is derived from the testimony of the Sutton family, whose home was assaulted by unknown entities in the fall of 1955. These events occurred on the night of August 21 to 22, 1955, near the little town of Kelly, located near the small city of Hopkinsville, in the rural area of Christian County, in southwestern Kentucky, USA. Visiting Lucky Sutton and his family was a man from Pennsylvania named Billy Ray. Billy left the Sutton house to go for some water from the family well. At the well, he saw a shining object land in a small gully about a quarter of a mile away. Running back to the house, he excitedly reported his sighting to the 11 people in the house. After a short period of time, the family dog began to bark loudly outside. As customary in this rural area, Lucky and Billy quickly went outside to find the reason of the dog's concern. At a short distance from the front door, both men were stopped dead in their tracks by the sight of a glowing hovering light, which came towards them and allowed them to see that it was in fact a 3.5 feet tall creature, advancing towards them with hands up, as if to surrender. The bizarre creature would be described as having 2 large eyes with a yellow glow, more on the sides than in the human face, a long thin mouth, large bat-like ears, thin short legs, and unusually long arms with large hands ending in claws. As tradition imposes, they grabbed their guns and shot first, all questions postponed, at the moment that the creature was no farther than 20 feet to them. Billy Ray fired a shot with his .22. And Lucky unloaded with his shotgun. Both men later admitted that there was no way they missed the creature at close range, but the little being just did a backflip, stood up again, and fled into the woods. No sooner had the 2 men re-entered the house before the creature, or another like it, appeared at a window. They took a shot at him, leaving a blast hole through the screen. They ran back outside to see if the creature was dead, but found no trace of it. Standing at the front of the house, the men were terrified by a clawed hand reaching down from the roof in an attempt to touch them. Again, they shot, but the being simply floated to the ground, and scurried into the cover of the woods. The 2 men sought the protection of the house again, only to find themselves under siege from these little men. The 2 men would fire at them. The bullet did metallic clanging noise when it hit the creature, which would flip over, or float in the air, or escape on all fours towards the weeds, only to come back again minutes later. The Suttons estimated that they might have been as many as 10 to 15 such creatures harassing them, although they never attempted to penetrate the house. After 3 hours of fear turning into sheer panic, with 3 children crying or shrieking, the Stone family decided to make a break from the house, and get help at the police station at Hopkinsville. Greenwell was in charge of the 20-plus officers at the scene, and reported that the Suttons seemed sober, and were genuinely frightened by something. As my eyes fell on the demon drawings in Plancy's Dictionnaire Infernal, 1863, I was struck by their similarity to the Feynman's 1955 Kelly Hopkinsville UFO case. Imagine the demons as gray in color, and they would also fit the description of the ubiquitous grays in recent abductions. Dr. Gregory L. Little, 1994.
Be me, be 19, kicked out of my house by my parents for reasons I don't want to get into. Whatever, I'll sleep in my car, find a parking lot outside a sort of storage facility, I think. It had a couple loading bays for semi-trucks, but there was no signs around it. Find a parking spot I liked and hop in the back and sleep. Wake up the next morning feeling super tired and kinda groggy. Not unusual, but that feeling lasted throughout the day. Notice a couple small red dots on my arm. Probs bug bites. I should clean my fucking car. After days of sleeping in my car, that shitty groggy feeling doesn't go away. starting to miss my bed, clean my car and use some bug shit I bought. These bugs are sturdy fuckers and won't let up. Notice scratch marks around the window of my rear car door. Better not be fucking wolves in this parking lot trying to break into my shit. Actual thought I had. One night I'm getting ready to sleep. Got a rocketpiss.jpg. Get out of my car and let her loose. Decide to go for a walk since it's a nice night. Lock my car and go on a minus 25 minutes walk. On my way back I can see a dark figure standing by my rear door window and jostling something up and down. Fucking homeless trying to steal my shit. Remember the scratches on that very same door. This isn't the first time this has happened. What the fuck has he been stealing? I haven't noticed any money or anything gone. Sneak up a little to see what he'll do. He gets the door open and pulls something out of his pocket. Decide this is enough. What you doing, you dirty cunt? Word for word what I said. He drops the thing he's holding, freaks out and runs off. Didn't even look in my direction. He just bolted. I could hear the thing break when it hit the concrete. I turned on the flashlight on my phone to try and see what it was. I found out what he was stealing. On the ground was a broken empty syringe. Broken fucking syringe. There was never any bugs in my car. Freak the fuck out and drive home. I told my parents what happened and we made up. I got a blood test and it came back negative for all that bad shit. I don't know what that guy was doing with my blood, but at this point I think I'd rather never know.
This one happened in January, right after New Year's. Me leaving Illinois for my home in Pa, was there visiting kinfolk for the holidays, 15 to 16 hour drive, didn't leave till late, planned on stopping at a motel, about 7 hours and the urge to sleep gets strong, pull into a small roadside stop. Go to check in, realize I left my wallet in Illinois, shit fuck damn it. Lady behind the counter says there's an old campground up the road, says to be careful though, nobody goes up there but she's heard stories. Ask her what kind of stories, local legends, you know. Mostly I think it's just meth heads. I agree, since I'm still in the Bible Belt at this point. Middle America has a bad meth issue. Take her instructions, find the campground. It was a pretty warm winter in the area so there's only a little snow on the ground, so the going isn't too bad down the dirt road to get in. Find the check-in office. Lady wasn't kidding when she said the place didn't get much use. Building's windows are all either gone or boarded up. Decide to park behind it just in case. Cops, already feeling sketched out by the situation, I decide to risk getting my concealed carry gun out of the spare tire area and load it, keep it grip out under the back of the driver's seat. Since I'm gonna sleep in the back seat, put my mag light on the seat next to me, grab my blanket and pillow and lay across the back seat, facing the window that looks out into the woods, leave the windows cracked so I don't die, fall into fitful sleep, wake up maybe 2 hours later with a god-awful smell. Smells like a mix of roadkill, vomit, and dookies. Oh sweet Jesus, I'm gone hurl. It's a big clearing and a pretty clear night, so I notice something standing at the far end of the campground. Think it's maybe a tweaker and the smell is coming from him, so grab the mag light and shine it out at this guy. Thing suddenly stands the rest of the way up. Probably 8 feet tall. It's too far out for me to make out any real details. Grab pistol and get ready as fuck. Can't shit my pants due to sheer, ass-clenching terror. Thing makes this horrible half squeal half bark barfing noise that trundles off into a weird laugh, twitches around and then bounds into the woods. Fucking what the fuck was that fucking shit? Slowly reach for the door handle, right as I do boom. There's a huge thud on my roof. Boom 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 barf giggle noise. Oh sweet Lord Jesus Plaza, don't let me die tonight. Open the door and rocket out, stumble, fall, roll over, shin mag light at my car and aim the pistol. I can't see shit, Captain. MFW, nothing's on my roof at all. Suddenly the smell is right on top of me, worse than it had been before. Jump up, almost at urine mode engaged, swing light and gun around, stop dead. Fucking thing is like 3 inches from me. Lean down, ain't got no face. Just a big ass ragged rip that might be a grin or a grimace, makes that horrible gurgling barf bark laugh, and I probably shouted or tried to sound badass, but it probably came out pretty girly. Shut eyes tight, pull the trigger until the gun clicks empty. All I can smell is burnt powder. Slowly open my eyes, the thing is gone. There's a lot of spent shells on the ground, also peed myself a little, don't even wait to see where it went. Just hear angry screeching from the woods, jump in my car and speed off, almost crash, hear that noise the whole way until I make it to the highway, don't stop for anything until I hit the PA border, and only then to change out of piss-stained pants and get a candy bar. Never been so scared in my life, honestly thought I was gonna bite the big burrito.
I think I can fuck up a Bigfoot with bare hands. I practice MMA for 7 years now. Boxing in parallel for 6 years, I could. Not to count strength training at the gym for 4 years, 6 feet 1.5 for 189 pounds. I have an insane speed, reflexes similar to my speed. I just have to wait for him to charge me, dodge his attacks, and throw good punches to his head. I won't stop, and at the smallest mistake he does, the Bigfoot is finished. You'll always have virgins from here thinking that it's impossible. First, nothing is impossible with Will, my friends, and 2. That's not with your weak ass bodies that you'll do anything. Any man with a minimum of training can beat a Bigfoot with a knife anyway. With bare hands, that is not necessarily more complicated, it just requires technical skills.
I haven't been around for a while, so I'll tell some new ones, but I was the creepy one lil non-Greentext part, so I recently sold off some land rights to a tant for towers. $6,500 a month for a tower, dat money. So there is construction crew chopping down some trees to make a dirt road to said tower location. It's not that bad, get to keep all trees for firewood and don't have to lift a finger. I started to notice the crews they had there were dumping shit and throwing trash everywhere. Spoke to their supervisor only to have him make it worse, getting real tired of their shit, start plotting, got a deer hanging in the garage draining, make their work trucks look like a horror movie. Murder spree went down, blood trails everywhere, bloody handprints on truck doors like someone was trying to get in them. Stuck a sack of rocks and dragged them away from the trucks to look like someone was dragged through the dirt, left all the unwanted deer parts in a bloody mess about 100 feet from trucks. Get called by supervisor to come over, see my made-up crime scene and throw up everywhere. Supervisor thinks an animal attacked and killed someone. Tell them there isn't an animal big enough around here to do anything except skinwalker. Explain I've been hunting it and could hear it screaming at night. Supervisor wants to call cops. Say cops are in on it and we'll just say it's nothing. Sheriff is neighbor, he could use a good laugh. He shows up and I explain everything. Starts telling them it's nothing to worry about and probably just nothing. They panic and all want to leave. It's been almost 3 weeks and they haven't been back. Trucks are still here, all messy. Tower contractor called and said a new crew will be here Monday.
This one happened a long time ago. I don't know if it counts as graveyard shift because it was around 10 or 11 that my personal experience happened, but here goes anyway. Where I went to college there is a legend surrounding the theater/art building about a girl named Margaret. Margaret supposedly committed suicide in the 70s for not getting a role she wanted in a play, or so the legend goes. Ever since then there has been all manner of crazy weird shit that goes on in that building. Cold spots, shit moving, doors slamming, even a few reports of an apparition. Spooky shit. In the beginning I was skeptical about the whole thing. Theater ghosts? Had to be a great big pile of bullshit. But then shit started happening to me that was unpleasant. My first experience was during a rehearsal in late August early September. I was working as a stagehand and had run off to grab something or another from the scene shop. Now, we had some big windows that let a little bit of the moonlight in, but not a lot. The thing about scene shops is that no matter what, if it's dark it is downright spooky. And you have to be very, very careful or you could end up tripping over something and getting hurt, or if it hadn't been swept properly sliding around on some sawdust and breaking your ass. And all the machines and piles of wood and shit cast us move behind one. I was very quick to call it nothing, tell myself to stop being a pussy, and get the goddamn extension cord. So I unlock the cage and go for the cord when a box full of nails upends itself over my head. It didn't hurt or anything, but it was startling. I walked out and figured out who had been into the nails last and proceeded to give them shit about making sure things are completely on the shelf before dicking off. Apologies were given and accepted, and I didn't think anything of it and went on about the rest of the rehearsal. The rest of the run for the play we were doing went off without a hitch. No weirdness, nothing falling, all was well and good. Between shows we had about a week and a half break before the next one started where we were all encouraged to catch up on our homework. The theater was treated like a professional goddamn operation, so everyone fell behind during performances. The next show we started working on in late September-ish, and it was going to be the big Christmas show the school put on every year. This is when shit really started to turn weird for me. I was working on building the set during the day afternoon and at night I was rehearsing because I had actually been cast this time around. I ignored the cold spots and just assumed it was because we were getting into autumn and the building was fucking ancient. One afternoon myself and a few other students were cleaning up to prep for rehearsal when a big, large iron weight used to keep ropes and stuff up, fell from the fly rail. The fly rail was about 40 or 50 feet off the stage, so this huge hunk of iron just crashed into the stage, fell in so deep we couldn't get it out. 4 feet to the left, and it would have downright killed one of the students. There was, of course, nobody up there at the time. This is the last experience I had with Margaret, and it is why I dropped out and changed majors the next semester. The Christmas show was entering its final weekend. We were all very excited for the big cast party / end of semester party / Christmas party that the kids in the department threw over the tie / Christmas party that the kids in the department threw every year. The weirdness had really thrown itself into overdrive, and that iron pig was still stuck in the stage. I understand it was pried up by maintenance and the stage repaired over the holiday break. On one of the last nights of the run, a light nearly fell into the audience. I don't have to tell you that a hot, heavy stage light crushing an old lady in the front row is bad for business. I was off stage during that portion of the performance, so I only heard about what happened. As I hear it told during some monologue or something, the light that was on the actor dropped so it was pointing straight down, and then the light just fell about halfway down. The only thing that kept it up was the plug, which our lighting guy had wrapped around one of the catwalk supports. A light falling into the audience was his greatest fear. He was, of course, very quick to shimmy up, and he reattached it before anyone really figured out what had happened. But the old lady that got briefly spotlighted was comped 2 tickets for another show just in case. But the reason I left the department, and that entire career path behind me, is because of what happened on the last night. We had just wrapped up, taken our cast pictures, and we had all changed out of our costumes and back into our civilian clothes. It was pretty late, and everyone was itching to get to this party that was going on. The stage manager, a real nice senior who had been sort of helping me on the behind-the-scenes stuff, realized a pretty important piece of a costume had been left downstairs. Being the good guy I am, I offered to run it upstairs. Sorry, character limit. So, I dash upstairs with this costume piece and go to leave it in the costume shop for someone else to deal with later. Now, everyone had told me since my first day on campus that Margaret liked to hang out on the same floor as the costume shop. Convinced that this was bullshit, I had gone upstairs alone, which was a stupid decision. At the end of the hallway there was this girl. My age, late teens, early 20s, not bad looking. She was wearing a flowing dress, like a ball gown or something. It was super nice. I thought it had to be one of the other actors, or maybe the kid of one of the blue bloods that had come to the show. For a small-town college theater, we drew a lot of people with money, had gotten lost or decided to disappear for a quick cocaine pick-me-up. I meekly say hello and raise my hand. The girl turns around and she was just awful. It looked like someone had just crushed her face in with a hammer. I very gingerly put the costume piece on top of the nearest locker, the hall was lined with them, and began to back away. And this thing just tilted its head, and all the locker doors start to shake like crazy. 1 or 2 of them popped open. Just awful. I don't know what else would have happened because I noped out of there as fast as I could. I never really told anyone about it, and at the beginning of the next semester I changed majors, and by the end of that semester I dropped out. The entire school just creeped me out after that.
Right after high school I moved out to the Midwest. I have nothing for me here on the West Coast and needed to get away from the drama that my life was tied up in. My parents offered me no support, my friends were dead beats, and the girl I had loved had lost interest in me. Instead of being a bitch and being a fucking bum and working at Pizza Hut till I was 30. I moved away from the town I lived in and settled down 1,000 miles east of where I was born and raised. There I met Nick. He was tall, thin, and had eyes that were completely black. He worked at a morgue, or a funeral home or something. He handled dead bodies, picked them up, dropped them off, dressed them up and cremated them. When Nick and I hung out and did stuff together, things would always happen. Things that couldn't be explained by me or any logic I possessed at the time. I knew very little of Nick, never met any family, and didn't learn anything of his past. He lived alone and, as far as I know, never hung out with anyone but me. He was dark-haired and had black eyes. He was taller than me. I am about 6 feet 0 even, and he was very thin. He drove an old car, like a Crown Victoria or something similar. Old, classic ride. We met at a Blockbuster, asked him about a movie, he said it was bad and suggested a different movie. I thanked him and went on my way. Every time I entered that Blockbuster, he was in there. Every time. Never failed. Whether it was 8 a.m. or 11 p.m. He was there. Never said hi, never acknowledged me. I asked the employees if he worked there or anything, they said no. Was just a customer who watched a lot of movies. I shrugged it off and just started paying attention to his choices. Typically foreign and horror films. Documentaries as well. Management guessed he had seen every movie in the story twice. I approached him again and asked him for a movie choice. He suggested a movie called Martyrs, saying it was a decent watch but had a silly ending. I kept pressing him for movies before finally asking him if he wanted to hang out. I was new in town and apparently all he did was watch movies. He agreed and met me a couple of times for dinner. We traded numbers but he didn't have texting. He had a very old phone, like early model Nokia. We went to a place for some burgers and shared dinner. I told him about where I was from, where I stayed and what I did for work. It was a little awkward at first. All he did was nod and make small comments. When asked where he was from, he shrugged or said, "Depends," or, "I don't remember." I took that as, it's personal, so I just dropped it. After dinner one night, that's really all we did at first, he said he wanted to go drive around. I agreed, deciding I had nothing better to do and exploring the new city sounded fun. We hopped in his ride, rolled down the windows and cruised around for a bit. He didn't say anything and just listened to an old cassette he had playing in the car. It was boring, but it was something. We continued to cruise around for most of the night. We passed off one of the main road and winded through an older neighborhood. We slowly passed out of the city and into a smaller town. Out of the brick and mortar and into the forest. The smell of the air changed from pollution to death. Literally, the forest smelled like there was piles of rotting animals or something. I asked to roll up my window but he ignored me. We followed the same road for miles, until there were no houses. The smell got worse and worse, to a point where I had to pull my shirt over my nose. The street turned into a dirt road and we passed over a set of railroad tracks. The street lights disappeared and we were swallowed up by the dark forests. Ahead of us was a single light, it illuminated part of tall wooden fence. Nick brought the car to a stop and shifted it into park. He didn't turn and look at me, just looked forward. I did the same, watching the hazy light flicker against the fence. 10 or 20 minutes passed before I saw anything. A figure passed underneath the street lamp, a short, thin bipedal creature. It stepped out quickly from the darkness and stood directly beneath the light. I inhaled quickly and turned to Nick. He watched it without any concern. He turned the lights of his vehicle off, apparently not wanting to disturb it. "I come here and watch them from time to time," he explained. I asked what it was. He shrugged.
The creatures didn't remain in the light for long. It dropped to all fours and quickly scurried out of sight. I shook my head, confused. Was it a person? A bear maybe, standing on its hind legs? I asked Nick but he had no answer. I continued to watch the street lamp. Time passed before I realized I had no idea where the creature went. It would be anywhere around us. My eyes drifted from the light to the trees, winding slowly along the shadowed details of the forest. I turned my head completely to the side and saw the last thing I wanted to see, a pair of eyes staring right back at me. It was a dozen feet away from the car, a small dark face staring at me. It looked like it had a snout, but its facial feature were that of a human. I screamed, I won't even lie about it. I shrieked as loud as I could and pointed at it. I turned to Nick, who didn't seem fazed by my cowardliness. He squinted at and shifted the car into reverse and back out of the woods and headed back towards the city. On the drive back he explained to me that they were some kind of creatures that lived out on the north side of the city in the woods. I was in disbelief, but it was obviously true. I saw them. He told me that he had discovered them while driving around a long time ago and had observed them ever since. He asked if I would go out there with him from time to time and check on them with him. I agreed, not sure if I had a choice. The creatures really aren't even the story here. They are the least exciting thing to happen with Nick and I. Ghosts, a demon, a cult in the forest, possessed homeless people. A slew of other stories are all ready to be told. Just ask away. I see 2 people requesting the cult story. I can do this. Where I resided there was a place called the Purple Church. An old urban legend that there was a church in the same general area as those little scouted creatures, that had been corrupted by its pastors back in the late 1980s, I believe. They started sacrificing people and did a complete 180, worshipping Jesus to Satan. The place was closed down and condemned, but people continued to practice rituals and sacrifices out there. It got so bad, and the crime rate was so high out there, killing animals, assault on people hiking in the woods, people disappearing, that the police went to the church during the day, roped it off and were ordered to burn it to the ground. Well, being the 9/file that I was, I did some research on creepy places in the state I was in and found that. I told Nick about, who nodded. I stated I wanted to go there and he agreed, saying we would do so at night. During the day it was boring. He had clearly been out there before, he didn't ask any questions about it. The sun set and his old car pulled up to my house. I left the place with my switchblade, mace, phone, mag light, and a lighter. I wasn't fucker around, everything I read this place was dangerous. We drove out the same way to get to the creature but followed the road past the lamp and the fence and into the actual forest. There were several abandoned houses, and if my eyesight wasn't failing me, there were small piles of ruined vehicles out in the woods. When we got past the lamp, he turned the lights of his vehicle off and parked it off the street behind some bushes. I asked him why, and he said it was too loud, it would get us caught. We proceeded on foot. Throughout the forest I could hear the roaring of truck engines, all throughout the woods. I thought little of it, expecting rednecks and drunk off-roaders. I was wrong. As I followed Nick down the path, he explained that people still came out here, even lived out here to worship the church. I laughed a little. He stopped and asked what was funny. I said nothing, like an embarrassed child, and walked on. We passed by a bathtub and it smelled terribly. I found it odd there was a porcelain tub out in the middle of the woods, so I pointed the flashlight over at it and turned it on. Inside were dozens of dead animals. Some fresh, some nothing but bones. I gagged and turned the light on, but it was too late. Hey! I heard someone scream from the forest, apparently giving away our position. I turned to run, tearing off down the trail and deeper into the woods. To this day I don't know where Nick went. I turned behind me and saw no sign of him. I don't know if he ran another direction, was on the other side of me, even in front of me. He was just gone. A truck with no headlights roared into view, half a dozen people loaded into the back with a spotlight and weapons. I bolted into the thick of the woods and dove into a pile of brush and logs. It was a decent hiding spot, mainly because I couldn't be seen at all. It was almost like a beaver's den. Men came off the trail and began exploring the woods. They had machetes and hatchets from what it looked like. Thankfully, all the light they had was from the spotlight mounted on the back of the truck. The men came closer and closer, weaving through the trees and grass carefully. It wouldn't be long before they found me. Then I heard a crash, the spotlight shattered, the illumination it provided dying away and leaving the landscape in a blackness so deep I couldn't see anything. The men complained and asked for the light to be turned back on. There was no response from the men on the back of the truck. It grew completely silent as everyone realized what was happening. There was someone else out here. All of a sudden a man screamed to my right. I turned to look but I couldn't see anything. One by one, shrieks erupted around me, each man being attacked by something. The men were being tossed around like dolls, slammed into trees and beat into submission by a tall, thin figure. Before I could make an escape, a hand wrapped around my mouth from behind. I struggled for a moment, turning to find it was Nick. He beckoned me on and followed him back to his car. We trotted silently through the woods and left the same way we had come. I still don't know what happened out there. It could have been him that thrashed all those guys, but how did he right behind me? It was so strange. I was terrified. We got to his car and headed home. He dropped me off without saying a word. Whenever we chilled, we would hang at my house. My roommate had gotten a girlfriend, so my house became a fucking war zone and we didn't like to chill there anymore. So I asked Nick if we could kick it at his place. He hesitated and finally said okay. It was a pretty dull place, a 2-bedroom house. Older building, pretty plain. Nothing out of the ordinary. We had chilled there and watched movies and ate pizza a couple nights a row before another weird thing happened. We were sitting in his living room watching some movie on Netflix when out of nowhere, his door to his bedroom, which is clearly visible from the couch, explodes open. It was closed and latched as far as I know. And out of nowhere it slams against the wall like someone kicked it open. I turned to look at him. He looked at the door for a split second and then went back to watching the movie. I asked if that was normal and he said yeah. I had crashed over at his place that night. I slept on the couch, he slept in his room. The entire night I slept facing the couch. All I could hear from the time we went to bed until the sun rose was someone walking around his house. Footsteps pattering from room to room. But Nick had never left his room. I don't know if it was a ghost or a demon. Something was walking around and had kicked his door open. Well, I asked about it, yeah, but the thing with Nick was that I never got an answer from him. Not a direct one. I asked who was walking around his house. He said he didn't know its name. I'm just like, WTF, what is it? He shrugged. That fucking shrug. Used to drive me nuts, but I got used to it. Another time we were outside, smoking cigars in his backyard. I had picked them up on a whim just because. So we are puffing on these things on his back porch, sitting in chairs and enjoying the night. Suddenly, the lights in his house go off. I turn to look, nothing ever bothered him. He was never concerned for anything. I could hear the familiar footsteps padding around his house. I did my best to ignore it and continued to talk to Nick. He got up and walked out from the porch and out into the moonlight, stretching his legs, I guess. I took this opportunity to turn around and peek into the house. Inside, a few lights were on. The light from his fish tank, the light from a clock it provided just enough to light to allow me to see a figure walking from room to room, a shadowy being darting from the hallway to the kitchen and every room in between. I called out to Nick, who turned and asked me what was wrong. I pointed at the being. Nick approached me and looked inside. The being snapped around and faced us. I couldn't make out a single detail of its person. It started at us for a moment before disappearing deeper into his house.
Nick placed his cigar on the table and entered the house, asking me to remain outside, which I did. He followed it back into his room. I watched his window, which had the curtains drawn over it. Time passed and I simply sucked on my cigar, waiting for something to happen. There was finally a flash of light from the room. White light, not light from a bulb. After the flash, the lights in his house came back on and he exited his home and sat down beside me and continued smoking his stogie. Stuff like that would happen from time to time in his house. Once I was in the shower at his place, after I had crashed there. While showering, the lights went out in the bathroom. It was uncomfortable because I thought Nick was in there. I pulled the curtain back and reached for the light and flicked it on. The door was still locked. Other times doors would be kicked open by nothing, much like that first night. Any night I slept there I would hear the person walking around his home, or hear whispers or knocking. One night I showed up at his place on a Friday with some alcohol and the new Dead Space game. I brought my Xbox and all that and said we were staying up all weekend playing this game. We didn't want to, but finally gave in. I mixed some drinks and hooked up my 360 to his TV and the fun began. An hour or so went by and we were both slamming back drinks. He was taking it hard. He changed. He wasn't as stoic, but he was weird. He had an accent. Not a fake one, like a legitimate accent that I had a little trouble understanding. Italian or French. I have no idea. His language varied, not always speaking English. And he was actually smiling and having fun. We got to a part in DS2 that we could not beat and got bored and started talking and just generally dicking around. He took me into his room and showed me his knives. He had a knife hidden under his pillow and one by his windowsill and another hidden inside a book. He showed me maps and leather-bound books and tomes of information. Some written in weird languages, all written about weird things. Some how to hunt, others how to make traps. But not any kind of mammal I know about. He had a bear trap in his closet and a small compact shotgun tucked into the corner. A small pile of stakes, like a vampire slayer, were also piled in the closet. Or should I call it an armory? It was stocked with weapons. I took these pictures at his place. I swear to God he was looking away from me. These were on my old phone. When I took them, we were both sitting on his bed, facing the TV playing the Xbox. In the photo, he is clearly facing me. When I took it he was facing to the left side of the picture. I am WTFing right now. I don't know if he turned real fast or just knew I was taking a photo. Or if he could change them, I'd WTF.
I have gotten a call from him one day after work and told me to meet him at his place of work at about 11 p.m. I agreed and said I would be there. He worked just a few miles from my house at a morgue or something. Dead bodies in and out of there. Funeral home, maybe. He drove around and picked up dead bodies from the city and dressed them up and made them look presentable. He liked to talk about it from time to time. He enjoyed his work. Pulled up at the building at the designated time to find only his vehicle in the parking lot. I got out of my car, locked it and approached the door. I yanked on the handle to find it was locked. Confused, I made a few laps around the building and even peeked inside Nick's car to find absolutely no sign of him. I called him a few times before I finally spotted him by the tree line, the small patch of forest that separated the building from the acute graveyard it had. He beckoned me over and disappeared back into the trees. I made my way over to the trees and waded through the brush until I stood in the cemetery. Again, Nick was gone and I couldn't see him anywhere. I wandered between the headstones for a while before seeing an open grave. The hole was dug but there no casket or body within, ready for a burial the following day I had assumed. I meandered over to it and peered inside to find Nick. He was laying on his back, hands placed behind his head, relaxing. He stared up at the stars and the moon. He glanced at me briefly and looked back to the sky. I plopped down on the side of the grave and let my legs hang freely, careful not to knock any dirt loose onto Nick. We spoke briefly of the day, how work was and what we had for lunch. Small talk, mostly. "Do you trust me?" he asked. I arched an eyebrow at him and nodded. He asked nothing more of it, remaining silent. I asked him the same question, honestly curious of the answer. "I do." With that he hopped up and pulled himself out of the grave. After dusting himself off, he led me into his place of work, the door opening easily to his touch. No key, no button. It simply pulled right open even though it had been locked not 20 minutes before. We entered the funeral home and passed through the small, welcoming lobby. It had a few chairs, the main counter and a vase with flowers placed on a sturdy wooden table. He led me through the main hall back into the dressing room. Inside was a wall of drawers, each drawer used to store and keep bodies cool. I wasn't comfortable at all, but he wanted me to see something, apparently. He showed me the tables where they operated and made people look presentable. Sewing equipment, makeup, everything. He had shelf after shelf of tools and objects he used for work. Scalpels, scissors, needles, thread, eyeliner and more. Racks of clothing were found across from the tables, dresses to suits and everywhere in between, and then there was a tall door. "Sorry guys, worked a 14-hour shift at work and needed to sleep. I am back for a short while." As for the questions and comments below, I never saw him with anyone else. Even when I would stop by his work in the middle of the day in the middle of the work week, the whole place was entirely empty. Never saw another car there. I entertained the thought that he owned the place and was the only one that worked there. Or maybe the place isn't even there at all and I am the only one who can see it. As for him, no, I typed that, you may be right. He actually gave me a call yesterday. Had no real topic brought up, just asked a few questions, direct ones. Where have you been, can still trust you, stuff like that. All went well, didn't feel threatened. As for the light post creatures, we saw them several times. I don't know if he looked after them, or he hunted them or what. I was never there for any kind of confrontations, we would just drive out there and observe them a few times. They approached the car and even touched the windows. Those one night Nick and I had driven downtown into this old like urban decayed, brick and mortar side of the city. Pretty much abandoned, pretty late and didn't see anyone else around. He said he liked to come to this side of the city to just wander around. We did that for about an hour, all the while he interviewed on my beliefs on aliens, religion. We turned a corner around this old building and saw a raggedy man standing about 20 feet down the sidewalk from us, totally still, just standing there. We both stopped and watched the guy for a moment. We shared looks before Nick stepped forward and started approaching. I wasn't frightened, I mean Nick may be taller, but I lift 6 feet 0, 220 and I had been going to a boxing gym for about a year at the time. Still, something was just creepy about the whole situation. The man was clearly homeless and somehow aware we were going to be coming around that corner. Nick took a second step forward before the man started fucking howling. I mean just shrieking. His mouth opened and he let loose a blast of hair. It was mind-numbing. I closed my eyes and pressed my hands to my ears. A moment passed before the screaming stopped. I dropped my hands back to my sides and opened my eyes.
The homeless man was now standing toe-to-toe with me, literally not an inch from my nose. I yelped, stepping back. How the hell did he get from that far away to being that close in a matter of seconds without me hearing him? I took another step back. The man smelled awful, like charred flesh and death. His eyes were white and his breath smelled like roadkill. I looked around for Nick and he was nowhere to be found. The man grunted and continued to make animal-like noises. I was walking backwards at a steady pace now. I got a few more feet away before I bumped into something. Relief flooded through, assuming it was Nick. I turned to find a second grungy, rough-looked man with the same white eyes and smelling of death. Air caught in my throat as I quickly checked my surroundings, seeing a dozen of these bums coming out of alleys, climbing fences, all approaching me. I was done playing. I grabbed the closest guy and went to push him to the ground. He was incredibly strong and completely overpowered me. He grabbed me by both arms and slammed me into the wall, knocking the wind and wits out of my body. I slumped to the floor and pressed my eyes closed. My head rang from the impact of the brick wall and the lack of air in my lungs. I could hear the steady sound of approaching footsteps, realizing I was probably surrounded. I looked up but continued to squint, my head in too much pain to be able to see correctly. Before I could ask for them to stop, there was a flash of light, similar to the flash of light that came from Nick's window that one night. The homeless men howled in disgust. I could hear a scuffle begin, some kind of struggle. The pound of bone to skin and the slump of bodies to the floor or into the wall. Several minutes went by with flashes of light and strikes being thrown into someone's body. Finally, I felt a pair of strong, slender hands pick me up. I am not sure if I was slung over someone's shoulder or cradled like a baby. I may have been dragged. I am not sure. I just remember being sat in the leather seat of Nick's old car and the familiar tunes of his cassette player. I woke up the following morning in my bed with some bruises. The demon started at St. Vincent's. We had gone there for some urban exploring, heard it was haunted. He said he had never been there and seemed excited actually. We drove by it a few times to scout it out. It was an old ransacked building right off a main road. We didn't see any security or homeless people, so we waited for the traffic to slow down and we made our move. We parked across the street and hightailed it from one side to the other. We made a few loops around the building, double-checking to make sure it was truly empty. We entered it and wandered around the two-leveled building. It was totally destroyed, being defaced and torn apart beyond all recognition. We picked through some of the rubble before it got dark and found nothing. The sun set and we left to avoid garnering attention and vowed to return after the work week. St. Vincent's is my favorite. Like I said, we went back out there after about a week and did some more exploring. We sifted through the top floor from corner to corner. There was a ton of stuff up there. In one room there was a desk with a bunch of old candles melted on it. In this office I discovered a fireproof safe. Those old little lockboxes, tan in color. It was behind a filing cabinet, under some rubble. We tried to jimmy it open but the tumblers wouldn't give to my untrained hands. Nick messed with it for a while and had the same results. We placed it where we found it, realizing it could be a drug deal or something serious. Suddenly uncomfortable, we headed downstairs to continue our expedition. On the ground floor the place was thrashed, like a tornado has swept through. Chunks of the walls were missing, graffiti and trash. In one room, though, there was a single yellow balloon tied to a chair. The balloon was new, still floating with fresh helium. It couldn't have been older than a few hours. St. Vincent's is my favorite. Like I said, we went back out there after about a week and did some more exploring. We sifted through the top floor from corner to corner. There was a ton of stuff up there. In one room there was a desk with a bunch of old candles melted on it. It was creepy but we ignored it. In retrospect, that pretty dumb of us. Someone had obviously been down there to tie the balloon to the chair. We raked through the debris, searching for anything of interest. That's when we heard it. Footsteps treaded softly above us. Someone was on the second floor. They were light-footed, making the softest sound. I turned to Nick, who was staring at the ceiling, listening. The steps stopped and I inhaled. The thought of someone up there had totally petrified me. Something crashed to the floor, a board or a box maybe. The footsteps grew heavy and aggressive, now stomping and knocking things over. A shadow passed over the staircase. Nick and I immediately retreated into a smaller room and hid behind a desk. Twilight had set in and darkness was not consuming the building. The steps pounded violently down the stairs. The being walked heavily throughout the ground floor, rarely stopping for any length of time. I was wide-eyed, staring at Nick for an answer. All he did was shrug. Finally we heard the creature step into the room we were in. It stood motionless, heavy breathing coming from it. The room began to smell like charred flesh and vomit. It was hard not to gag, but I prevailed, stifling my hacking cough. The creature actually spoke. "There is no need to hide, Santos. Never return here." It spoke deep and grumbling, like its throat was swollen and its lungs were filled with fluid. It then exited the room and the building. We waited a few minutes before coming out from behind the desk. Nick stood first and hopped over the old wooden piece of furniture. I did the same, planting a hand on the top of the cold splintered wood and swinging my legs over to the other side. All Nick would say is that we need to leave, and so we did. We didn't go back upstairs, instead exiting through a broken window and sprinting across the courtyard and street until we reached his car. He thrust the key into the ignition and gave it a turn, the old engine roaring to life. On the drive home I asked him what it was and where it came from. He shrugged, but I shook my head. That shrug wasn't going to work this time, so I continued to pry for answers. Finally, he gave in. I'm not sure what it was, far too dark for a ghost. Ghosts don't speak, not like that. It was a demon if I had to guess, something bound to the building. That place is evil. I could taste the malice there. I then asked who Santos was. He explained that was his last name, that the demon knew who he was, which wasn't good. I shook my head. Nick continued to tell me that we needed to find the key to the lockbox. He wanted to see its contents. I agreed to help him find the key on one condition, that he include me in the adventures. I wanted to know more about what was going on and not be kept in the dark. He reluctantly agreed as he dropped me off. Nick pulled his sleeves up, exposing his arms. I had never seen him without a long-sleeved shirt on and was surprised to see his skin covered in scripted tattoos. We said goodnight and I went to bed. Nick and I took our sweet time returning to St. Vincent's. A couple work weeks passed. We both worked Monday through Friday, typically, and caught dinner, a couple movies and generally chilled out. The encounter with the demon at the abandoned building was a little startling, mainly for me. But even Nick seemed put off by it. Finally he made the statement, he wanted to go back. He made the call early on a Saturday and said we would depart later in the evening. I agreed and told him I would be ready. The day passed quickly for I was pretty excited and nervous to return to St. Vincent's. Finally, the sun began to set and I heard the familiar roar of Nick's car in the driveway of my house. It was a quick trip over to the old brick building. We parked across the street again and slipped over the asphalt, and into the depths of St. Vincent's. We made short work of the upper level, scoping out the few corners we hadn't checked on the trip prior. We pulled the lockbox out of the rubble and placed it on the wax-covered table nearby. After securing the lockbox and searching the top floor, we descended to the first level and slowly began combing through the trash and debris. We stayed silent in the darkness, using small LED lights to illuminate our way. I think the reason we stayed quiet was fear of stirring the demon up again. At least that was my reason. An hour passed and still we had no results. It was disheartening, realizing we're literally looking for a needle in a haystack. Maybe the key isn't here, maybe the owner took the key and forgot the box. I offered sheepishly. Nick shook his head with complete confidence. He was convinced the key was there. Why would someone take the key but not the valuables? He questioned. I agreed and continued to the search.
I found info on St. Vincent's, and on the murders. Can't link you, using my phone. It came top on the search, St. Vincent's Home for Boys, Oklahoma. We continued the search well into the night before finally we caught on to something. I had tried to open one of the drawers on the desk on the bottom floor, the same desk we had hid behind when the demon came. It held fast against my touch, not pulling open to reveal its contents to me. I made note of this and told Nick, who quickly began working the drawer open. First we tried brute force, yanking, kicking and just beating the desk. Nothing worked. Nick reached into his pocket and produced a blade. Nothing fancy, a straight blade maybe 6 or 7 inches with a thin leather sheath. He bent down and began to pry the drawer away from the desk, deciding to just break it open. A few minutes passed before finally I heard a crack and the drawer plopped down to the ground. Inside there were several folded papers, a schedule from the 1980s. Names we didn't know and listed times and places were in a certain order. Even a grocery list was among the papers, but at the bottom we saw the faint glisten of an old key. It was a simple key, much simpler than I thought it would be. We cheered in joy, literally. Or at least I did. Nick didn't seem surprised to find the key. I on the other was completely ecstatic. We took hold of the key and ascended the concrete stairs to the second floor. Nick led us straight to the box and slid the key into the lock. A simple twist of his hand moved the tumblers and brought the box right open. Inside was more papers and several very yellowed, old folders. We already knew about the murders and the happenings of St. Vincent when it was open and in use in the years before. These papers elaborated on the killings, the people involved and all the incidents leading up to the deaths of the employees, patients and the very owner and operator of the Home for Boys. There were files on each of the people involved in the murders, written conversations, journal notes and even predictions. Whoever owned the lockbox was aware of the incidents that happened in St. Vincent's Home for Boys and did nothing about them. The notes described a tangible presence that was turning things for the worst. This being had made itself known over the years but had affected one employee particularly, a male nurse. He spoke and babbled of it regularly. "Hey op, you said Nick trained you. Due to what? What was it like? What all did you find out? Come on, you can't just tease us like that, tell us more. Have you ever wondered there would be consequences for your actions op? Demons coming after you and certain death or satanic cults?
Well, the encounters with the demon grew worse and worse. We got involved in some weird stuff, like uncovering the additional information about the murders of St. Vincent. He showed me how to track spirits. How to sense them, seeing them takes years. What kind of beasts reside where, how to handle them and which are hostile. He taught me survival stuff. Like, stuff you would find in a scout's handbook. How to build traps and stuff, track things. He taught me eskrima, which is a form of Filipino knife fighting. He tried to teach me energy usage, but I have no skill with it at all. He said it would take time, but I have little patience for it. Every day. Death is actually what brought me here. Nick and I had an encounter where we saw out deaths. I have reason to believe mine could be coming soon. So I decided to come out and explain as much as I can without going against the order. Not really an order, but whatever it's called. More questions? The oracle that provided us with the vision. Well, long story short, my vision had a bit of dialogue in it. I heard that bit of dialogue recently, meaning my death could possibly happen soon. The order is just what I call it, I don't think it really has a name. It's just a collection of people like Nick spread out across the globe. Watcher. Protectors. People who keep the paranormal in line and the soon-to-be extinct creatures in secret. There are so few that they mostly know each other by name. Some take on apprentices, train new people for new areas or if they think they need help. The group has been in action for a long time. Since the Crusades, from what I understand. Nick has been a member for what seems like decades. He makes it seem like he is very old. Can you tell us of your most disturbing incident with Nick? Like something that really left you distraught after it happened. Something that really messed me up. They all had heavy effects on me, to be honest. Once we were tracking this thing through the forests way southeast of the city, out by a lake. Pets had been disappearing. We found a pile of dead dogs and cats, torn apart and snacked on by something. Something with hands. That had me pretty twisted, seeing all these dogs that had owners waiting for them at home. There was this time Nick had called me up in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. I had been sleeping and had work in a few hours, but Nick insisted I go with him. He claimed he had a dream and it needed to be investigated. We went downtown to this old part of the brick city, abandoned, near where the bums attacked us. We went to one of the big buildings, a boarded-up abandoned theater. Like Broadway, theatrical play, theater. Balconies and a large stage and whatnot. There was a vampire living inside that was feasting on the homeless. The place smelled like blood. Was terrifying because it was talking to us. What did your conversation consist of? You'll have to forgive me in being a little skeptical on this though. It talked to me, mostly asked me questions, mostly about why I had come to that state, what food I liked, what my hobbies consisted of, if I missed my family. Asked if I believed in God or religion. Mostly just curious about things. It crawled along the darkness of the roof and through the rafters. Scurrying along the stage floor and all throughout the darkness. Never stayed still for very long. Very pale, long dark hair that was greasy and very thin. Nick ignored it, searching throughout the theater for hidden people, bodies, trying to catch the being and other things. They talked briefly, it didn't seem interested in Nick. They had probably met before. He could have just been doing a check-up on it. Its name was Lucas. However it spelled, sounded very French or German. Not very good with accents, nationality. So you said you have moved back to the West Coast. Are you acting as a watcher over that area now? If so, what are the creatures, etc., that you check in on? Could you give us a list? Also, what is the purpose of those checkups? Yes, I am. Making sure they are staying populated, no issues with them becoming extinct. Making sure they stay fed, not having any issues with the wildlife. Making sure they stay out of human territory and hidden in the wild. Creatures over here consist of a Bigfoot-type creature that lives on the Mogollon Rim. They are like sloths that live on the mountains, forests and canyons up north. Very tall, muscular and furry. Extremely long arms with massive talons on the end. For reference, try looking up Mogollon monster. There was some newspaper sightings back in the day. There is one spider in Sedona, only one. It is massive, bigger than a car. That is the biggest chore of this state. Keeping it away from the mountain faces and towns. A breed of goblin, or something similar, lives in the deserts out here. Long-eared, green-gray skin, sharp teeth. Live north of the Grand Canyon and south by Tombstone. Out in the middle of nowhere in holes in the ground. They can communicate, very easy to deal with. As long as we provide them with monthly food, luxuries, they agree to stay underground most of the day. Big snakes, big lizards. Typical vamps residing in old buildings and caves. Werebeings, demons, ghouls, hybrids, possessed folks. Why do you think you'll die soon? What is the order?
B15, mom's going out of town for a week, leaving me alone, fuck yeah. Avi, first day is fine. First night I have a fucked up dream, only part of the dream I remember is the very end. Strange girl, Holocaust skinny, pale as death, hair like grease, starts snapping her head/neck and limbs in strange directions, lets out a scream akin to the thing. Scream wakes me up, can still hear it for a few seconds after I wake up, shake it off as a bad dream, go to make myself breakfast, keep seeing shadows out of the corner of my eye, finish making breakfast, go to take it back to room, glance down hallway while walking to room. The girl is just standing in the far corner of my mom's room, snaps her neck up and stares at me. Nope out, get into room, slam door behind me, lock that shit up, sit in chair shaking for 30 minutes, calm down eventually, decide it was just my head playing tricks on me, finish eating and take plate to kitchen. On the way to the kitchen can't see mom's room, on the way back have to look. She's on the other side of mom's room now, closer to the door, fucking points at me with backwards arm, elbow facing upwards, dive into bedroom. That was no mind trick. Grab rifle, aim it at door for what feels like an hour. Nothing bursts in. Decide it's safe enough to go back to browsing the internet with my rifle next to me. Do this for rest of the day until it's late at night, then I can no longer suppress hunger. Bring rifle with me to kitchen. Make a fine-ass dinner. On my way back see her again. She's in the doorway of my mom's room now. Stand watching her because I feel like hot shit with my rifle. Look her over, arms are both backwards. Right leg entirely backwards. Left leg jutting out at weird angle. This angers her apparently. She snaps her jaw down, lets out the exact same scream from my dream, starts dragging herself along towards me. Morale check, 0%. Jump into room again. Same procedure as above, finish dinner in room. Thinking over my situation, pretty obvious I can't call anyone and rant about spooky ghost girl in my house. Decide the only thing I can do is try to face it head on, in the moment. Try to stay up through the night, eventually fall asleep in computer chair, have the exact same dream again. When she screams I wake up again. The doorknob to my room is jiggling back and forth. Thank Jesus I locked it. Aim rifle at door, jiggling stops. By now I'm entirely losing it thinking I'm going to die. Luckily she doesn't try anything else and I just spend the rest of the night online again. Spend my time thinking over what I'm going to do when I face her. Live in a city so I can't exactly shoot at her unless I absolutely have to. Decide the best thing to do is try to hit her with bayonet on the end of my rifle. The dawn comes. It is time. Fix bayonet. Charge out of room and down hallway trying not to shit myself. Charge all the way into mom's room. She's not there anymore. I look all over mom's room trying to find her. Nowhere to be found. Start heading back down hallway to my room. She's in front of my fucking door. Decide to stick with original plan. Charge. Run right through her. Feel nothing but cold. Run directly into my room, fall flat on floor from momentum. Look behind me to see what's happening. She turns slowly towards me. Starls walking into my tout. Kick my door closed on her. She turns into a cloud of fog. Lay where I am for a while thinking, it's clear I can't hurt her. It's also clear I don't want her to do whatever the fuck it is she's trying to do with me. Decide the best thing I can do is stay in my room until mom comes home. Luckily I was weird and had emergency supplies of food in my room. It turns into a siege for the rest of the week. I can't leave my room. Every time I fall asleep I have the same crazy dream. Every time I wake up to her fucking with my door. As time goes on it gets more and more aggressive. Eventually it goes from jiggling the doorknob to slamming into the door with a loud bang. By the 6th day I've almost completely lost it. No sleep and constant stress make me insane. 6th night, I know I just have a few more hours until mom comes home and I'll be saved. The thought relaxes me. I start fading and fall asleep. Have the same dream, wake up at the same point. This time something is different. No slamming on my door. Dead silence for a few seconds, then suddenly there's a crash of breaking glass. Sounds like it was from mom's room. Realize this is actually happening and not in my head. Grab rifle and run out into hallway. Can't see shit because it's so late. Suddenly a shadow figure runs out of mom's room and into the cone of light coming from my room. Hear the scream again. I've completely lost it by this point. Bang, 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 shadow figure drops to the floor. I fumble with and eventually turn on the hallway light. There's a knife on the floor. The shadow figure I saw was a human. Big pool of blood around him. Between this and the 6-day siege, my mind shuts off entirely. I'll pass out in the doorway to my room. Wake up to someone shaking me. It's a cop. The neighbors had called when they heard shooting. I tell the cops what happened that night. Omitting the previous 6 days, the man I had shot was a known felon who had been breaking into homes to steal things. Mom comes home. Cops explain what happened. Everything fine, I'm okay. Act. After that night, never again see the girl or have that dream.
Hey Elxie, I've got something interesting enough to bring me out of lurking. I hope some of you can perhaps give me some insight as to what the hell I saw. I was just another 8 or 9-year-old kid living in Mormonland, Utah, wasting his summer vacation while life was still fun. Out behind my house, practically in my backyard, was a huge dike at the mouth of a canyon coming from some nearby mountains. There was a drainage pipe that acted as an outlet for the little water that came down from the canyon at the base of the dike. Right above this big pile of accumulated sand was the perfect natural sandbox with the perfect natural garden hose providing a constant steady trickle of water. It was easily visible from the back windows of my house, and this allowed for my mom to watch me play from within the house, and she'd let me mess around all day. At the base of the pipe was a huge dinosaur nut, and had a bunch of those nice, cool Carnegie collection models that a destructive kid like me should never have. Would take a bucket full of these out to the natural sandbox every day, and would create little river systems and immerse myself in the anarchist society I created of my dinosaurs, sitting out in the sun for hours and getting sunburned pretty much every day with a neighborhood kid who tolerated me. Did this on and off for the majority of the first half of the summer. Nostalgia sad. In mid-July, as it happened every year, it started to rain more, and one night we got hit with a decent thunderstorm. Lay in bed that night, no doubt anticipating the new environment I'd have to play in the next day. Got up at an hour which no doubt pissed off my parents, not bothering to wait for my friend, and headed right out to my little natural sandbox. A significant amount of water was coming out of the pipe, and a small pond had formed where I usually played. I played with my lake for about half an hour as the sun rose a little. It had to be 7 or 8 in the morning. Was sticking dinosaur toys in the shallow mud and trying to balance some on pieces of floating wood debris when something floated next to my little hands. I went to push it away because it was on a collision course with one of my improvised boats, but ended up recoiling. You know when you're a little kid and something startles you so badly that you don't scream, but you just kinda stare and retreat back a little with your heart jackhammering? That's what I did.
Thing was about the size of a guinea pig, and I use an animal as a size comparison because it was definitely an organic thing, but it sure wasn't any animal or living thing I had ever seen or have ever seen since. It still freaks me out to think about. It floated in that low current region at the edge of the pool for a few seconds, and I got a decent look at the thing. It had that fatty pink-gray waterlogged color of something that's been dead and in water for a little while, but not yet falling apart. It had a head, torso, from which trailed half a dozen or so tentacle-like things, splayed out around it in the water, and a couple dragged in the mud. It was hairless and didn't look like it had ever had hair, but it wasn't scaly either, and it had a fucking face. Not a human face, not even close, but a face. It reminded me slightly of the face of a pug or bat. It was wrinkled and flat. It had a toothless, slack open mouth, and I could see one of its eyes, which was that dead custard color, scared the fuck out of me so much that all childish desire to examine or poke it with a stick was gone. I quickly retreated back to my house, and told my mom what I had seen. My mom seemed worried and even interested, and accompanied me back out so I could show her. By then the current had carried it away, along with a couple of my dinosaurs, which was almost as upsetting as seeing the thing itself. We looked around and found one of the dinosaurs, but never found the thing. I was too nervous to play there for the next couple days, which worried my parents cause I really loved playing out there, and they tried to convince me it was just a decaying dead animal. Eventually got over it and went on playing. A few years later, when I was 13 or 14, the whole incident came back to my mind and I explored up the canyon to see if I could find anything, which I didn't. I never forgot seeing that thing. I know it could partially be explained away as the result of a creative childish mind, or that it really was the decomposed remains of something else. But I remember it very clearly. More clearly than any other childhood memories, and the thing was really clearly defined and seemed very whole. I had searched the internet for explanations and haven't found anything. I've even looked into cryptids and the like. The globsters kinda remind me of it, hence the pictures, but it was much, much more clearly composed. What the hell was it?
Summer 2013, decide that it's time to kill coyotes for dat sweet sweet fur, grab my bare bones basic AR-15 I got for cheap I know, I like the way AK slings affix so I get out a sling point to put on the barrel, sling it on my right side around my neck messenger bag style, take my ATV up to a cabin on the mountain, take the key to my ATV, start looking around. I had been throwing squirrel and rabbit guts into the woods and shit to bring predators around, check my bait. It's all gone, keep getting a strange feeling. Guy who lives on the mountain just down the road leaves in his car just as I decide I should look around in a woods. Every time I step one, keep thinking I hear another footstep shuffling through the grass and brush. See a stick figure shaped looking thing in the distance a little bit downhill from me. Wave at it. It slips behind a tree. Okay, guy. Walk back up to the cabin. Decide to sit around and drink for a while. Start hearing coyote yelps and shit in the distance. Get ready to blast a couple foos. Sit with the lights off on the porch and nothing comes by. Then the yelping turns into a distant he helped me. Look over to the neighbor's house and the lights are off. It doesn't click that he left. Get up and listen. Hey, help me. Hear me, fuck. He broke his leg and is stuck in a woods with coyotes or some shit. Get close enough to the woods to tell it's on a ATV trail. Decide to take my ATV and are driving towards the person saying help me when I come to a U-shaped dip in the path. Don't hit my brakes. Just coast down it. I hear something right in front of me on the trail scream help me. And I freak my shit and try to turn, flip my ATV and black out for a minute. Wake up under the ATV, with it pinned on top of me. Sit still and wait for my eyes to adjust. Start feeling around.
Find my left leg is pinned under the ATV, try pushing it but I can't get it off. It's like it got 100 pounds heavier in a couple seconds. The sling around my neck tells me I still have a rifle. Drag it to me. Realize my arm is bleeding in the meantime, check over the gun, the handguard is fucked and the stock is cracked but it appears to still function. I've got 30 rounds to keep me safe until the night's over or someone finds me. Sit and listen closely to the sounds of the forest. Before I hear something shuffling in the grass that silences everything. It's dead quiet. I don't think I've ever felt more fear than I have at this moment. I hear it shuffling around. Help me, help me. Don't know if I should respond or sit in silence. Its shuffling gets closer. Something appears over the ATV, just like if you had fallen at a bar and the bartender looked at you funny. It looked like it was 9 foot tall, frozen solid. Twiddle my fingers and reach for my gat. Just bring it into my shoulder and sit there pointed at whatever the fuck it is. Don't want to look at it because fuck that. Help me. I hear it climbing over the ATV, looking away still, but something grabs my face. Fuck. Mind is blank, looking for triggerfinger.exe, not found. Would you like to delete this shortcut? It slowly moves my head over. I'm face to face with this thing and it's looking me in the eyes. It looked like how almost everyone else describes them. Gollum that had done crack and carved up its face with sunken cheeks and deep eyes. To this day I've never smelled anything quite as worse as the breath from that thing. Feel the flash hider on my arm bump into something. Remember I had it aimed at the thing. Brain reboots, scream as loud as I can. It screams back. Start yanking, not pulling or squeezing, the trigger as fast as I can. Gun is going off. My ears are starting to ring.
It grabs my hair and starts slamming my head into the ground as fast as it can. Still pulling the trigger as fast as I fucking can. LT rips the fucking gun from my hand and starts beating me with it. It's still screaming as loud as it fucking can while beating me over the head with my own gun. Lights start flickering through the woods. About to black out when I hear something louder than the screaming. I swear I saw the thing's head fly open. It drops my gun. Screams like a child that's just been shoved in an oven. And runs for it, drops my gun 10 feet from my head. Lights getting closer. Don't know if I'm dying or being saved. Anon, hold on. Something's tugging my arm. Look over, it's the guy who lived down the road. He's got a WEG revolver. We're talking a Magnum Research BFR here. Blackout. Wake up in a hospital. Had a fuckton of stitches in my head. When I get out I ask my neighbor what he saw that night. Replies with, a bear. We get them often up here. Not entirely convinced that I was nearly beaten to death with my own gun by a bear.
5 years old, being raised by a single, working mom. She doesn't bother with the kindergarten shit. Instead, an old lady who lives in the same apartment building makes my breakfast and watches over me until her grandkids are back from school. They come back before my mom does, which means that for about 2 to 3 hours, I am home alone. One day, during that window of time, I get a phone call. Some man I don't know asks if my parents are home and I tell him I'm alone. Back in the day we got a lot of calls from people who dialed the wrong number, so this wasn't unusual to me. Man doesn't hang up though, and he starts chatting with me. I'm bored as fuck, so I'm glad for the company. Pretty much tell him everything, that I don't have a dad, that there's a lady who watches over me in the morning, but leaves at noon, that I'm alone until 15 hours so I get bored and lonely a lot, etc. He tells me that he is a college student and that he moved away from his parents, so he gets lonely too. Says he'll call me again at the same time tomorrow so we can keep each other company. He does call, and this turns into a ritual. Normally we just chat about whatever inane bullshit comes across a 5-year-old's mind, but sometimes he'd make up stories for me. I only vaguely remember one of them, which was about a very good boy who ended up in a world where all the rules are the opposite, so he was suddenly considered bad. This goes on for a long time, for months maybe. I think I told my mother I had a new friend, but she dismissed it. Anyway, time for my 6th birthday come and I'm super excited and tell him all about the party I'm going to have and the gifts I'm about to get. He says that since we're friends, he should send me a gift too and asks for my address, saying he'll mail me something. Being a greedy little shit, I tell him. He doesn't call again. My birthday comes and goes, and I get no gift in the mail. I remember being very hurt by this, thinking he forgot about me. About a month or so after he stopped calling, I get a ring at my door as soon as the woman who watched over me left. My mother taught me to not let anyone into the apartment when I'm alone and to just ignore the doorbell, so I did. After a while, the ringing stopped and I heard a familiar voice calling out to my name. Anon, please, I know you're in there. I've got you your gift. I tell him that I'm not allowed to let him in and ask him why he didn't send it by post like he said he would. He explained that the gift was too big to be sent by post, so he needed to come over and give it to me in person. He is pleading I let him in, says he is my friend. I'm feeling very uncomfortable at this point, though at the time I wasn't quite sure why. Still, being curious about the gift, as well as about how my friend looks like. I looked through the peephole. He didn't look like how I imagined him at all. I can't say he was ugly, but he looked off. Tall, skinny, acne, very baby-faced, which didn't seem to match his deep voice at all. He looked almost sickly. Immediately noticed that he was empty-handed and that there was no gift around. I still vividly remember the cold, sick, empty feeling in my gut when I realized that something is extremely wrong, and that I have made a terrible mistake. I'll immediately start to bawl and to plead that he goes away. I don't know what I thought he was going to do, but I knew that it isn't good. He tried to comfort me, while still pleading to be let inside. He then started fake crying, saying that I must hate him. I almost said that I didn't when he started trying to get the door to open. The door was locked, but I was still completely petrified. I tried to block it with a chair like I saw in cartoons, but I couldn't do it. My brain went to autopilot and I screamed TM calling the police. That made him stop, and he immediately left. I was extremely shaken, but also ashamed. I knew I fucked up, so I didn't tell anyone about what happened. Instead, I insisted that I want to go with the lady who was watching over me and stay at her place until my mom gets home. Soon enough I started going to school, and for a while I would stay there to do my homework instead of going home immediately after class, because I didn't want to be alone there. I don't know for sure if he ever called again, but we did get a couple of silent calls here and there. I don't know that it was him, but I feel that it was.
2 in the morning, about to drift off to sleep, hear loud talking from outside, peek out the window. 2 people out on the street across from my house, one standing up and one weirdly laying on the ground. Standing one is encouraging the other to hurry the fuck up man, but without too much urgency, stop playing around man, come on, etc. The other one is laughing, coughing / talking nonsense and like wiggling or vibrating. It was too dark to really make out anything other than a shape. One standing up takes a few more steps and says things like, I'm going to leave your stupid ass here. They're clearly at least drunk, likely more. They don't notice me as I am just peeking out from behind a curtain. I'm not particularly worried, but the last thing I need is a window asking me to make a phone call and running away with my shit, or getting angry and busting out a window. The standing one goes over and helps the laying one up, and then bends down. I assume he's picking up something. The more inebriated one dropped. They set off and I stop hearing their talking after a minute or two, shake my head, think what is happening to this town like a boomer. Next morning wake up and think about it again, look out the same window again while thinking about it. My fucking face when I realized the spot the second person was laying down is where the old busted storm drain only covered by a metal sheet is. Nope.jpg. He wasn't lying down, they were crawling out of the fucking sewer. He wasn't picking things up, he was putting the metal sheet back into place. There are fucking drug addicted bums in the sewers in my neighborhood. Fucking why the fuck is there always some spooky ass fucking thing people are up to? Video related. Not mine clearly, but this shit happens.